$20 ticket, and it was a 50 times $10 hit.
Good day. I'm lucky if I win.
I never win. No, that's what I'm saying. That's like
I
what?
win, but I
And
usually.
I only buy them on the way here. It's funny, when I have Fincom, I'm like,
Yeah, last time I saw you there, at Little Peach.
I win, but it's like 10 bucks, 15, it's 20. I never win.
I buy the $2.
Okay,
crackers, so
let's
my
get started,
Yeah.
and we
and
hit
welcome
about
to the Finance
40 to
Committee meeting.
45%. So if I get her $40.
Hello, people, you want to chat, go out in the hallway. Welcome to the March 19th Finance Committee meeting. Our agenda this evening will include Nick Lawler supposed to come in and talk about the Light and Water Department budget and articles. We'll be talking about, excuse me, the operating budget, review the capital budget as it's being presented by the selectmen. Then we'll have member updates, minutes, and adjourn. So I was expecting Nick to be here, so I think we'll go ahead and start the discussion on the operating budget. And when he comes, then I'll just slot him in. So, Steve, we have, you gave us the
Here are the
operating budget summary.
operating budget, Article 4, the warrants. Warrants are hot off the press, just came in from Harry.
Yeah.
Oh, it is,
Back
okay.
there, yeah, part of the legal size paper.
Okay. All right. Now, the operating budget at this point is basically in balance with the town operating budgets going up 5.85%, school appropriation going up 6.6%, and the school's revolving spending actually going down 25%. The rest of the items are pretty much within range of what we had expected. One thing that I did want to mention is that for the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, we've had new growth between 1.9 million and 1.2 million. In this budget, it's 800,000. And the assessors are projecting next year in the 600,000 range. So even if it's, they're off by 25% or 30% and it comes in at 800,000, it's not $1.2 million or $1.9 million that we've been benefiting for the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm not saying we're coming up on a cliff, but it's certainly leveling off to a bit of a downward slide. So I think that's something we should all keep in the back of our minds going forward as we think about even, this year, the fall town meeting, and then going into next year, because the huge new growth just isn't going to be there again unless something really explodes that the assessors aren't aware of.
You can just see the drop in the revenue if you just look at this from 19 to 20. I mean, it's down.
Yep, and, so a piece of that is, the new growth being down.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
so I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments or wants to talk about anything in here. The last time we actually got together, I think the numbers looked like we were 100 to 200 light. And the assessors came up with some of the money, and where did the last 90-some odd thousand come from, Bonnie? Because the schools were in at $1.4 million. Well, their request was $1.4 million.
we're about
We had,
110.
the first one was about $1.025 million or something. assessors came up with 200,000, that brought them up to $1,200,000 something. And now they're in at $1,311,000. So,
So that's kind of where we had the schools in at $1,400,000 at the last scenario, the last update. So now they're in at a lower number of $1,300,000, so
But-
that's,
but how did we get from the $1,200,000 to the $1,300,000? What was that, what closed that gap? Was it new growth again, or was it some other?
primarily
Insurance
the
stuff,
increase
or-
was new growth. The insurance was adjusted previously. The major contributor was new growth.
Okay.
And I asked the assessors to go through it again. I think the previous estimate was $680,000 in new growth. And based on what's permitted and what's looking to be occupied, it's looking at $800,000 now.
Okay.
Was there some discussion, or some concern that the health insurance was gonna go way up or something like that? Did that not happen?
No, the health insurance, we were previously, like months ago, estimating that it might go up, but in January, we realized that the increase was gonna be almost minimal.
Okay.
So we had adjusted the projections on that.
So no bad surprises expected?
No.
Okay. Okay, anybody want to discuss anything? I mean, normally when we come up with $200,000 or $300,000 of revenue, we sort of discuss where it should go. The assumption here is that it's all going to the schools. And if that's the will of the committee, then I'll entertain a motion for that. But if it's not, then we should at least discuss it.
Is anyone else asking for the money in the last, for those funds, in the last couple of weeks?
Well, there were a list of, head count that people wanted and hours that people wanted. I know the library was looking for some hours. Let's see who the heck else. The police had the SRO, that I forwarded an email to you all from Mike Peru, I think his name is. Basically stating his concern that the school was funding full-day kindergarten to the tune of, I think his memo said another $150,000, when if they only funded at 75, we could put the other 75 towards an SRO, which he felt would benefit more people across the school system. So I told, when anything like that comes to me, I send it right out to all the committees, so you're all aware of
I saw it.
what is out there. So I know of I remember those two. Bonnie, were there
There
other?
was an additional, I think, $10,000 for cemetery summer help.
For the cemetery,
Right, seasonal workers.
and then there was for
There were
field
a few
maintenance.
hours in the treasurer's office,
Yeah,
5 hours a week for one of the staff members. And
Use all that
a parks person.
Did they all get cut, or
they
just didn't get approved.
did not get approved?
Nothing, right.
We just need to
Right, there's no, right,
Yeah.
there are no incremental heads on either side. But it's, it's at least worth the discussion, is if we're all comfortable that the right thing to do is to do the incremental 300,000 of revenue, to basically round the schools out, then that's okay. Or if you think there's some things should go somewhere else, then we can at least discuss it. And if there's no discussion, then I'd entertain a motion to accept Article 4 as presented.
be like I need to make this motion.
I guess any discussion would have to be, relevant to it. If that's the only money we're talking about, really, is what Mike was talking about in the email to us, and that, but we've talked about all of this before. The kindergarten, funding it over 5 years. I think if it had have come to our board and we had have voted on it, we probably would have made it a little less aggressive. It probably would have been a 10-year buy-in, 10% a year to get us to a full.
The thing that I've been thinking about on that, and
But-
again, off we go, but, you know, the school committee can agree to that stuff on their own terms, but then they come and they say, our level funding is level services, and it's
Yeah.
not level services. They promise things mid-year that then now is part of their level services, and then we have to deal with it here. And usually it's 2 weeks before things are done.
Well, they had put a plan together for all full-day kindergarten.
No,
I'm sorry?
They had put a plan together.
Right, we're in year 3.
But-
We're in year
2 or
yeah,
3.
no, I
yeah.
understand, no, I'm not saying any of that, it was there.
Yeah.
But the library can't have a meeting and say, we're gonna be open 10 more
Right,
hours a week.
right.
And then next year say, well, that's level services.
Yeah,
It's a different, and the schools are wonderful. I support what they do, and they do a wonderful job. I just am always uncomfortable with the process, and that's,
yeah, like I said, I've had enough discussion where these, anything that I'm going to talk about tonight, at least from my opinion, is gonna be more driven towards going forward and maybe tweaking how we get to this point, because it's,
Process.
the process, I think, needs some work, that's all.
Well, next year when you're chair,
Yeah.
you can drive the bus. And God bless you.
I'm not just speaking, you know, about how we operate, but I just think in general, on our, you know, our Super Saturday and how we can maybe tweak that a little bit. And,
That's fine, absolutely, and we can,
So
yeah,
the-
absolutely, once we get through town meeting, we can
yeah,
spend some quality time on it, and whether it's just us or us and selectmen and school committee together, having the discussions is fine with me,
I look forward to
absolutely,
that.
Yeah.
In fact, I
absolutely.
think a lot of reorg and management level issues are appropriate for review, just based on the turnover we've had in key positions.
Right, absolutely.
yeah, new town administrator and possibly an accountant coming on board before then.
hopefully, not possibly.
There you go.
Gary's got fingers crossed over here.
One thing that just looks a little strange, probably needs some explanation that I don't have, and that is, the schools obviously have gone up. Their request for money's gone to appropriation, but I look at the school revolving spending right under that, and they reduced that by 25%. That probably needs some explanation from somewhere, because I'm not sure I understand it.
If that was mentioned in our working group or
Yeah,
not.
no, Mike
Yeah.
mentioned that, you know, they did get run at heavy with
Sped.
sped
That's right.
supposedly, and, which is always the whipping boy. And they're pushing that into the operating budget, basically, and so they don't have to spend it. They're not expecting to have to spend it out of the revolving this coming year. Now, what they actually spend on revolving, I don't know. We don't see an accounting of that. And maybe we should ask for it, so that we see what comes in revolving and what goes out, what they actually spend, so we can get comfortable with that. But, again, that's something for, you know, future discussions. Okay, Steve, anything from you on this? I mean, you know, so,
You know, I've been focusing on the PMBC line items on the sheet, and I don't know if this is the proper time to bring it up.
capital, we'll get into
Yeah.
capital in a minute,
Yeah.
okay? Yeah.
No, I agree with the comments that Gary and Greg have made.
Okay.
Paul, have you looked at this, since this was hot off the press, is your,
Which,
Forward.
if, does it reflect what we voted last Monday, or?
What are you holding up?
I don't think,
Article
I don't
four?
know if there's any changes.
is there any changes to it, anything?
As long as it represents what we discussed last Monday night, There hasn't been any change in our part.
So you folks are in favor of this then?
The budget document,
Yeah.
with that caveat, I don't know what you'll
I just want to make sure, we've got everybody that's got eyes on it and
Yeah,
that's concerned
basically,
about
it's
it.
the one that
'Cause if
says
we're-
we have
I mean,
$3,200.
Gary's earlier point, we had working groups, and I'd hate to be revisiting issues that people were left with the impression were essentially settled as long as we got into balance.
I guess my point here is, we're allocating some extra money to the school, to schools for that, and I just want to make sure everybody's okay with it on the town side. If we're good with it, then let's move forward with it.
Yeah, and I will say, with sparing the viewers, that we did have some heated discussions in working groups with the school committee, obviously, because they're the biggest piece to this, but, and how we got to this point, so that discussion what Paul's referring to is where we got where we are right now. So.
Now, have you guys met with Prue and his group on the SRO to verify, just to get comfortable that, you're gonna push it out? And that's okay if that's where we land.
No, our dialogue's primarily been with the chief. And, we've had the email,
Well, I saw the kumbaya, but, yeah, I also know it's been pretty hot and heavy around it. So, okay, but as long
as it
as you're
reflects
on,
this
as
year's
long as
budget.
you guys are okay,
No
mean,
anticipated change.
I mean, technically, this is our vote
Right.
for the town meeting, and if we want to, we could do something, whether it's crazy or perceived to be different from what was agreed to or not, but I just want to make sure everybody's okay with it, and if they are, then I'll entertain a motion.
If I'll just add one more thing before we take a motion, if I could. So, I think there wasn't anything, we balanced the budget. So, if there wasn't anything glaring that we could sit here and bicker over unless one of the, managers wants to speak to that.
Yep.
And the fact that we're at this point and, the room's not full of people that don't want to burn us at the stakes on where the money's going, I think we're in the realm, we're in the guidelines that we, and nobody, it's not a perfect situation, the money is down, and we've talked a little bit about futures, and things are gonna get tighter, and so tensions are gonna get a little bit tighter, so I think we have to just be prepared for that, tough decisions and tough discussions, so.
I'll entertain a motion. I can't make one, so.
I'll move that we approve Article 4 here as presented tonight.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend Article 4 as presented and balanced, by the way. Any further discussion?
I just had one comment, Fred, and you had sent something out on Article 4 indicating that we should have some language in Article 4 about where the funds are coming from the cell tower.
That seemed to be too dumb to handle detail.
Not for Article 4.
Wasn't that for 4?
No, it was, I think it was CPC.
That's CPC.
CPC,
yeah.
and those funds are way down this year.
Okay.
So I wanted to have a brief discussion on that. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So so have a motion and a second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None? Okay, 5-0, 2, 4, 6-0. 6-0. Okay. Nick, I'm gonna shift gears here, so Nick doesn't have to listen to the rest of our gerbil. Nick Lawler's gonna come up and give us an update on the water department article and any of the projects that he's got.
So I sent Fred the a 5-year plan and also our town meeting article. Did that get distributed, Fred, or?
When was that? I don't, I'm sorry, I didn't.
I don't know. Don't remember. It's okay.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
The town meeting article got inserted by the selectmen.
It's Article 6 at the end.
So I don't know what you prefer to talk about first. I guess the town meeting article is
Yeah,
probably,
let's go through that.
that's probably the easiest. That's just our operating fund, our O and M. It's a little higher than last year, and that's based on us adding a position to handle the Wickham Ave treatment plant, and that comes online. And also the debt that's gonna be incurred due to that. Other than that, we were able to hold all of our expenses level. So,
So is that additional headcount or just,
it's one additional person. If you remember, I think I was probably in front of you guys maybe 4 years ago when Verify was leaving. We went through a staff reduction as part of that to try to not increase rates as much as they needed to be. Now that Patriot's back and they're starting to use water, that really started, we started seeing draws probably in January. So if that continues, then life is good. We're really short-staffed, we need to bring that additional person on. Plus, if we add another treatment plant, then we're really short-staffed.
How much water are they drawing?
I think it was 28 million gallons last month. But it's hit or miss. It's, it's like, almost like they're going through test runs in order to see how these lines are gonna handle. They're still below what they projected to be at,
What's that?
like 45. They're projecting to be where Verify was in the heyday of Verify, 3 shifts, full tilt.
Okay.
If you look at our 5-year plan now, if you just shift to that, we have very conservative numbers in here for their revenues. So hopefully our rate, what we're recovering our rates is actually gonna be more than what I'm showing here. Until they actually start producing and running lines full shifts, I don't wanna show that on our revenues. So, I mean, we're going through a lot of projects right now, we're incurring a lot of debt with the Wickham Ave treatment plant. The reserve fund, we typically try to keep around $1 million. And obviously, you can see we're not keeping it down at that rate. And that's because of all the debt we're incurring. It's still in a healthy number, I believe. Probably 5 years ago, that number was close to 0. We're right here.
remember that?
Yeah. So, I think this year will be the lowest that we projected to be at, and then it starts to increase again. That's without a rate increase. That's not touching rates. And my board and I started discussing, touching rates, because our rates don't recover our O and M. And if you look at our rates, are projected to recover 2.265 million. Our O and M, without the debt, is almost 2.5. So we're kind of living on these connection fees and these other things that are happening, which is good, and they're gonna be there for a while. But at the end of the day, once we stop growing, we gotta make sure that our rates are recovering our cost. So we just need to ease into that and try to figure out the best way of doing that without, impacting all rate classes.
And Patriot might do that, excuse me.
And Patriot could be a big part of that solution. Yeah.
Now, do you see any projects in the next year or two that would be, on the commercial industrial side that, maybe the assessors haven't seen? I know, people come and talk to utilities, thinking about doing stuff. Do you see
Not from a
any-
commercial standpoint, but if that apartment complex was to go at Foster Street, that's a good
Up by
project
the
for us.
train station there, yeah.
Yeah, we'd be very supportive of that, from both the connection standpoint, but it's great water use, it's not irrigation, it's base load water use. So projects like that are great, for our department.
Okay.
And Patriot, we just gotta keep on hoping Patriot is what they said they're gonna be.
Okay.
For the capital projects this year, so Newtown Tank needs some serious work. We have $220,000 into Newtown Tank. That restores the tank to almost brand-new conditions. That tank was built in the '70s, so that's a great project. That tank will last another 40 years. We have the,
So how long will it be down?
couple weeks,
Okay,
yeah. We have plenty of storage in town, so taking tanks offline is not an issue.
okay, good.
Another big part in the capital budget is the demolition of the old highway garage
Yeah.
on Wickham Ave,
And how much do you have scheduled for that?
$188,000, which was the estimate
Okay.
Time Bond gave us. We'll know for sure once we bid it what that cost is.
Okay.
And that includes the asbestos abatement?
Yep.
That's fantastic, actually.
Yeah.
It's a lot less than
Yeah.
we were told,
Yeah.
Okay.
650, I think.
Well, that's just an estimate. We'll see what the real number is when we bid it.
Well, the last estimate was 650,000.
Well, I hope my estimate's right.
Yeah, exactly. Being a water rate.
I might give it back to Paul if your estimate's right. So those are some of the bigger capital projects. We have we're getting a new dump truck. We have a 30-year-old dump truck that needs to be replaced. Other than that, in Wickham Ave, it's kind of status quo.
Okay. Good. Any other questions for Nick? Financial or otherwise, how do we go?
Just- We're good in terms of water supply, though, in terms of enough with all the extra draws and all that, and all the,
You have to ask
that's the
that
new
question.
wells and so on, huh?
We're exploring options. I mean, obviously, we're looking at all the options of water supply. So the answer is yes, we're good for supply. The growth is impacting us. So, you know, we're trying to develop bedrock wells off of Cobb's, off in Neshoba. That would help. You know, we're obviously looking at Nagog, Lake Nagog but as a source. And I'm actually leaving here to go meet with the town of Boxborough for a potential source there as well. So there's options out there. We need at least one of them to come to fruition.
What happens if Patriot, all of a sudden, summer comes and people are drinking whatever they're bottling for, like crazy?
So we've been very fortunate in the last couple of years not have to do extensive conservation measures. The last time we did it was during the drought, and I believe that was 2 summers ago, or 3 summers ago. And we were very effective at reducing water usage through our communications. People responded very well. If Patriot comes to light like they said they're going to,
Right.
and the growth continues, then those conservations will be part of our everyday life here in Littleton without another source.
Okay.
What's the extent of our participation with Boxborough? What do you,
Very preliminary. They have some issues there where they have a lot of private area wells that are being contaminated with salt. So they're looking at solutions to solve their problem. And they have a source over there that might be a solution to solve our problem. So it might be a situation where we can both win.
Yeah, a win-win on that situation, yeah.
But we're in very, very preliminary discussions on how that would look and work.
The current status with the NAGOG discussions, where is the latest on that?
Court?
So you're just waiting?
Yeah, it's in land court. We had 2 cases, so if you remember, Concord took us to land court. We took it to the SJC, because that's what we felt, that's where the Act of 1884 told us to go. The SJC dismissed our case without prejudice, which basically just said, we're gonna let we have all this noise with land court. Let's see what they say before you bring us to the SJC. So we'll see.
But you've already been on their docket, so if it has to go back, they're aware of it. I mean, you've started that.
Yeah, do it again.
I feel it's a
Started.
start over process
Yeah,
there,
it is.
yeah. Yeah. No, NAGOG isn't that's not a solution for today. That's more of a long-term solution to make sure that we have access to one of our greatest resources in town.
Okay, good. Anything else for Nick? I'll entertain a motion, if there is no more discussion, to vote to support the Board of Water Commissioners FY 2020 Water Enterprise Fund operating budget as presented. And the numbers we have here are the same as, I just want to make sure the
Yeah, I think it's
numbers we're voting are the
Is it
same ones you have.
4 million?
4024-533, 4080-936.
Yep.
Okay.
Article 6, so moved.
Second.
Okay, A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. 6-0. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay.
Fred, you're making good time. Keep up the good work.
Okay, we have the capital listing that the selectmen hacked and whacked through last week? Last week, yeah. And,
Marathon, how long did that meeting go?
We burned some oil.
Stay within one
I gave
calendar
up.
day.
It gave, yeah,
Barely,
5 hours and some odd minutes.
yeah.
so, all righty. But I believe what we have here are what, now, did you guys actually vote it, or did you sort of, you were on your knees? by that
Larry, I don't know.
point?
you have to
I don't
check.
think so. I don't think so.
You didn't vote it while I was there, I don't know.
We came to a consensus in any event, it's agreed upon.
Okay,
They'll do their votes on Monday.
okay.
So you have blank sheets there. I didn't know whether you wanted to start from scratch, or you were going to just piggyback on what the selectmen came to. So
I'd
there
like to
was
see is
some,
what they took out.
there were some
Yeah.
changes
Yeah,
from
what,
the
you know,
original
I think
sheets,
if
so you
we
have
could-
the original sheets there.
Let's see here.
So the original sheets, or
So something like the first thing with the selectmen, the continued work on the space needs, they brought that down from 100,000 to 85,000. You have the 100,000 sitting there.
Okay, so we don't have the updated sheet.
I have it right here, I can put it up on the screen.
Okay, yeah, let's put it up on the screen so at least we can see.
I don't want to taint your discussion with,
Might as well start with that request before you,
So this has dropped to 85.
everybody see that okay?
So, continue you kept the MS4 permit, which is basically, I mean, we've got to pay for it, so. And you cut 15 out of the
Space
work
needs.
on addressing space needs. Okay,
How was that 15,000 saved? What was done? Was it just quote work or?
it was offered by the two people who chair the committee. As far as the detail goes, I don't think they have it's an estimate on their
Just an
professional
estimate.
services that they'll need anyway.
Estimate reduction.
haven't got anything in the last year out of that group, so probably won't.
Should be down to 0.
Well, we got 15 grand saving here. I'm excited. I'll figure out where it's coming from.
You can't spend it, though.
No.
Yeah.
Guess the question is, why not 30, right?
Okay, so planning board was way down, and they sent a memo earlier that took 141,000 out of their requests.
I'd like to know, since the planning board's here, Marin's here, why it was originally 165 and where did the savings come from? How did we arrive at 24,000?
Okay, as I outlined in the memo, the $65,000 request from the Master Plan Implementation Committee was, excuse me, the 50 from the Master Plan Implementation Committee was a placeholder in case work was moving forward on the common faster than it is. Since it's not, that's withdrawn for this year. And then there were 2 planning studies, and then after realizing that, what this year's budget was looking like, and some internal discussions, we reduced both of the amounts on both of those studies.
Okay, so should we expect that 141 that you cut out to come back in
What I hope-
next year?
What I hope to do is work closely with the planning board and the master plan implementation committee for a several-year budget to understand better what we're looking at over the next several years. I know that's been a request.
That would be
you
helpful,
have. Yeah.
especially if we're gonna try to squeeze the library inside. We're gonna have to come up with serious money over the
Yeah.
next number of years to support that, so.
Yeah, and we also realized how many planning studies we have going on at the moment too, and we're a little buried, so.
But that was
Well,
Greg's
yeah, I think
concern
there was-
earlier, was just that
Yeah.
it
There's
just
quite
seemed
a
like
bit
there were, everybody and their
allocated
brother
already.
had some going.
Right, have never seen a time in the town where, what the town was looking for matched up so well with state grants. So that's why we're rushing a little bit on some of those, because a lot of it has been grant funded.
Great, okay.
But weren't there already requests about, I thought Bonnie, if I'm not mistaken, over there, 450,000 has already been allocated to some of this work? Something like that, or requested, appropriated?
Over the
the
past
past
few years.
few years? So, what I'd like to see, and I mentioned this at our last meeting, I'd like to see what that's been spent on and what progress has been made based on that spend.
Yeah, yeah, and to me, one of the biggest pieces of progress we've been able to make is to talk more together about, what the town's future is. It comes into the selectmen's discussions, planning board discussions, and I've heard it in the finance committee discussions as well. To me, it seems like a more focused vision on where we're moving. But, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I like the idea that we're looking at more of a long-term budget versus kind of coming at it 1 year at a time. But I guess when my concern lied, when I saw this originally, was, well, we appropriated quite a bit already. We've got more here that's being asked, and it's a significant reduction. Are we really going down the right path with this? So I'm glad to hear you're looking at a plan for long-term,
Yeah.
and I'd like to see what that looks
Based,
like.
based on the master plan,
Right.
based on the recommendations that the town all agreed on.
All 50?
Well, 230 that showed up the first one. and-
Votes a vote.
So that was a spaghetti dinner.
Yeah, that was the spaghetti dinner, I think. Thank you.
Whatever draws them, right?
Whatever
Absolutely.
works.
So, can I,
Yeah,
just speak
please.
to Paul, just, what was the genesis of, the 300, we were trying to get to 300,000 in cuts?
It's, well, it's
That-
cuts,
That's kind of what drove these cut.
you say cuts, it's $300,000.
Right, I'm sorry. Yeah, that
of
word.
less than what we originally were available to us for capital spending in order to transfer it over to the capital stabilization
Yeah.
account to build up over 2 years' time, not only that account, but also the debt capacity under the levy limit to carry borrowing costs consistent with $7 million borrowed over 20 years at 5%, which I believe is consistent
With our policies and what we've done.
Right, and, I mean, if it is 7 million and it's borrowed at the number Steve said, it's between $500,000 and $600,000 a year
Right.
as a payment. So if we save 300 a year, we've saved 1 year's worth of payment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the context in which you should think about it, that's all.
Yeah, that in addition to have created the space to pay off the debt over the life of the loan.
Yeah,
Right.
as long as we don't strangle the rest of the
Yeah,
departments.
I mean, that's why
That's why-
phasing it over a couple of years was, I wish we had more time, maybe we do.
I guess I missed that. Making space, what does that mean?
Well, if what we're doing with this year's allocation,
Yeah.
as opposed to do with next year's, is to put that money into capital stabilization,
Yeah.
then over the overall budget figure we have, what is this year a contribution to capital stabilization, and the same in the next year, will in the third year out be instead increased debt payment.
Yes, basically, you cover the first couple of years of debt payment. But then
You
it
just
comes home.
still kicking stuff down the can that needs to get done, still in the capital.
No, I think we've been.
No? Well, these not so far, maybe not kicking down the can, but some of them. Okay, let's see. Oh, we haven't seen it yet, so I shouldn't say that. You're right, I haven't seen it yet. Let's go.
Okay. PMBC?
Can we scroll down to the
Yeah,
bottom, see what the, okay, okay. That was my concern, because on the list that we have in front of us, it has $176,000.
Right, so,
548,000.
So that includes the first 5 or 6 items?
That
I can't,
is,
because the roof replacement's 190,
Yeah.
so,
the lift.
I think the order
roof.
changed, the order prior, I think Steve helped us in.
Well, today
in,
I sent the order
Yep.
over to Steve.
so,
So it's covering down to the high school doors, skipping the HVAC and doing the windows.
What all
That's what
included
this,
in that is at the bottom of Article 9, or the page where Article 9 is?
That's not updated.
It's not Article 9, but
it's not updated either.
That's,
Oh,
it's not updated because
not
nobody's
here, so
voted.
So what is the,
Capital.
yeah,
all these things are still here? Is there
so
any change
what
from
are
this?
the?
high school painting,
Yes.
high school windows, high school
PMBC.
this, high school that.
It looks like it goes
That's the
down,
original.
the first,
Three iterations.
Houghton Building.
So the selectmen
Was
brought
the,
in
was the ADA?
the ADA,
ADA is in,
Remember
yep.
the roof,
Roof at the Houghton Building.
yep,
I
police
remember that.
station,
The water
Water.
filtration you said needed to be done.
the highway roof,
Filtration, right?
Windows.
the high school doors, no on the school HVAC, yes on the windows, and no on the remaining items. So the total,
I'm
yes.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Oh, I see, the nose, I didn't,
The-
oh.
The 30,000 for the windows was in, the ceiling and striping was out,
Correct.
and the epoxy is in.
Is
or
out.
Out,
He said that's not.
The
updated,
painting is out,
That's wrong.
okay.
Yeah.
That's what
so
goes.
the total in was $403,000.
So that's 430,
403,750.
okay. And from your perspective, Steve, that's the order that we should?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why HVAC duct and insulation was nixed and the windows was included, since this was the order in which Steve Mark gave me the priorities.
Priority, right. Well, there was a hue and cry come up from
Darryl.
Darryl on the windows.
Okay.
And I don't, I'm sort of zoned out by that time, to be honest with you.
Well, and
I know
the
those-
bottom line is that this is a lump sum. We can fight this out after the fact.
Well, I think in virtually every department there, we had conversation, we were present for much of it with, each of the proponents. So with some of these PMBC school-related items, Darryl was definitely here, but in all the others,
Yeah.
various departments were represented, and, the conversation involved, everybody affected.
And I just have one comment on the lift at the Shaker Lane School. At the last meeting, Darrell was to ask Steve Mark if there were some grant money available for that. I know Steve was looking into it. I have not heard.
Okay,
I don't have an update.
okay. But there is a potential there if,
There may be a
okay,
potential.
something,
Yeah.
okay.
What is the difference between the dollar value between the HVAC and the windows?
They're identical.
They're identical.
Identical?
30,000, yeah. Alan, it's on,
It's on
So
the-
one of the projects is gonna get done. I mean,
I'm not paying
Okay.
that, stop it updated.
The windows was the second year.
This is more updated than.
Yeah,
the-
phase 2, so they
I
just
think.
naturally,
It
yeah.
can-
He was
That's in here.
Oh,
pretty adamant about the windows, if I recall that meeting. So,
Well,
there
this,
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
That-
this,
that-
this
that's
list
what
was per Steve Mark this morning.
I- Okay, oh, this,
Okay. This order, the
Okay.
priority for the school.
So,
so you guys can circle back on that.
Yeah, we can,
but that's,
we
okay.
can figure that out.
And then, police, Is that it for PMBC, Steve? Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Police was all yeses,
No.
They were all
for a
no's.
total of 150,000.
No, we're on the next column. It was all no's under PMBC as far as their epoxy,
The
but
police piece of the.
these are all
PMC.
police. The bottom here,
Yeah,
that's all police items.
150,000
but
for the police. Those 6 of them.
okay, so
So chief's
you
priority.
guys cut out the admin, right? The admin vehicle.
Are you moving to the other column now?
No, it's part of the replacement plans. That's,
Everything was in.
right, because he wasn't asking for anything out of the ordinary. That's part of the regular vehicle
Yes.
rotation plan.
The police.
The admins generally have twice the lifespan of the regular cruisers.
Yeah, but this says we're doing it.
Yes.
And I thought that was one of the items that you guys.
It's one of the ones discussed. We,
I know it pissed the chief off, but
no, I think that was ultimately left in.
That was left in?
it was.
Yep.
Okay. All right,
Then the carpet with a no at the bottom, right? Well, we can't see.
okay, so that 150 is,
Dollar Capit made it.
Did make it.
okay.
Yeah.
Because it had already been reduced,
All right, so this is a little change from,
not from, it shouldn't be from last Monday, if it's accurate.
But that's okay.
The carpet, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, what's reflected there is a number that's smaller than the original request that the cut was
Correct.
already made before it came in, right? Right, so the only one that's reflected there is just for the community room, right?
okay,
Correct.
yes.
Right,
Yeah, the EOC.
right.
Okay.
Fire Department, the first 3 were yeses and the last 2 were nos. So the utility trailer and the ambulance were nos.
Well,
So explain to me how this is not kicking the can down the road,
that's
though.
kicking, yeah.
Well, it's because, I mean, we had this full discussion last week, but what it essentially is there's a plan to have them replace, what, every 6 to 7 years, ambulances? So if it's 6 to 7 years, then we're mindful of that, and it's gonna be funded in next year's budget. There's 2 ambulances, and we don't wanna have them appear in the same year, but other than that, I believe I think what you, I don't know, Tom, if you remember
Well,
exactly.
it
but I
was
think-
scheduled for last year and got put off to this year.
Right.
And now it's getting, so,
Now it's pushed out again, right?
right,
Now,
but
the-
again, as Paul said, we have 2 ambulances, but the ambulances now pay for 8 employees, 6 paramedics, 2 dispatchers. So
Right, now-
we only make money when we transport. So if we don't take anybody, if it breaks down, then you're down to 1. And I get it, there's only so much money, but unfortunately, we'll do the best to keep them going.
Yep.
But it is.
So how old is the other ambulance?
The other ambulance, because of the last go-around, is only a year older than this one, so it's a 2013.
Okay, so next year it'll be 7 years old, and next year this will be 8 years old.
Yep.
So,
They're both on the window for replacement.
So you're gonna look
But
to
we're-
replace them both next year?
No.
No, because financially, that doesn't make sense, from a standpoint of taking
wanna
all the
stagger.
capital. But I think the idea, yeah, I don't want to get into it without the chief here, because I
No,
don't want
I
to.
understand.
And we were very mindful of the age of the vehicles across the board in a lot of the decisions of when to get them into the schedule and when not. Don't mind having the request, appreciate the fact that it's thoughtfully part of a replacement plan that doesn't have them coming in at the same year, that's the same with the police department. And in this case, we made a decision that we could defer that one for a year.
okay, so.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the police, or the fire chief said that he could defer that a year.
He did, right, he offered that up, but he said he'd trade that for the $5,000 trailer, and he got neither one.
That's true.
Okay.
For the ATV, we go with a grant, that's all. You know, so.
Okay. All right.
EPW, 20,000 for the vehicle repair is a yes. The dump truck was a yes. The 2004 dump truck was a yes. The Chevy replacement for $42,000 was a no. $800,000 for the building was a no. And the sidewalk repair is $250,000. That's a yes.
And that meets our ADA compliant piece that was the most heavily damaged. Is that what the plan was, I think?
That's, Chris said 250 would cover it. Yes.
So 500.
It's 593,000 funding. Parks
How
Department?
long, I just got one question on this, 4,000 square feet addition. I mean, how long can that be put off? Do you think that's something that's, I know Chris isn't here, but I mean, can we kick that can down the road for a long time? Or are we looking at this all coming back next year and we're gonna have to deal with it?
Well, I mean, Chris's comment was that if you gave him $650, he wouldn't pave it anyway, because if you're gonna do the sewer,
No, he's-
you
No, I'm
gotta
talking
tear
about
About
the
the-
4,000 square foot
The
building.
addition
The addition.
on the building.
Well,
Is it a want or a need?
it depends on who you listen to, because where Nick is tearing down the building that the highway department is storing plows and stuff in. Those have been moved up under a shed, I think. They've been moved up under a shed on the light department area, right?
Right.
And Nick and Chris have had some lively discussions on it. And I really think it's a selectmen and board of commissioners down there to wrestle this issue to the ground. I mean, that's all it is. It's just-
Okay. It's just it's a big number, and, you know, if you keep kicking that can down the road, does that number go from 800,000 to 900,000 because it costs more to build it?
Yeah,
You're talking about the highway department shed?
Yeah.
The presentation was never even made to us. I don't know when it went into the capital plan, but something bad happened this year in that we never even got a look at our own department's request for capital until the day before the budget hearing in January. So one of the things we would definitely like to look at in terms of change, because this is very awkward to be addressing our own department requests, which never even made it to us until they were before your board.
Yeah,
And so
no,
that's why we're kind of catching up with missed time to go back and say, no, wait a minute, you know.
No,
we-
absolutely.
So
I mean,
that's,
if
that's
they
a.
report to you, you should
yeah,
be,
right.
at least know what's going on before that.
Exactly, so
Yep.
we're, you know, we're conducting the review a little later in the game than we should have, and, you know, there's probably a variety of reasons for that, but in any event, was not, they weren't presented to us until very late.
Okay. But in any event, to your point, you know, there's $350 for an ambulance and 800 potentially out there.
They're gonna be back next
depending on
year,
what-
right?
Well, the reality, every node's gonna be back.
Every node's gonna be back next year, so
Yeah.
at what point do we look at, and how do we fund it, you know?
Well, you hope there's not as many yeses being added.
Well,
That's weird.
Yeah,
well,
Well, let me just suggest that if we're ever at a year where we're saying yes to everything, we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
well, that's true, but I guess my concern, I mean, as the chairman said, we're gonna be a little lean on growth the next few years. We saw that coming last year. I mean, Bonnie had sounded the alarm about that, and, you know, we're gonna start living in it. And, you know, if we've got these big capital expenses that we kick the can down the road, how long can we kick them down the road is really the question. It's not whether we kick them, it's how long can we kick them for.
Making a judgment to fund something some items this year and that some other items next year is not, I wouldn't accept that characterization of kicking the can down the road.
Right,
You know, making tough decisions about the one vehicle that, based on its use pattern and age, needs to be replaced sooner than another. But every year, we're gonna be faced with choices, that's the
Yeah,
reality.
don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
And I agree, I mean, next year, I would think if the projections are correct, you know, I would suggest that we really need to look at the increases in general on the operating side of, 5 to 6% as a norm. That's what we're continuing to fund this year. maybe we can't afford that rate of increase each year, as opposed to just, because capital gets reviewed after the operating budgets, just as a form, it becomes the point upon which the budget is either balanced or not budget. If we did it first, it'd be just the reverse.
Well, and the operating budget increases are with 0 headcount adds. So it's not like people are spending like drunken sailors, so we've got wage scales, steps
Well,
and lanes. And
they're not
square
spending
ups.
like drunken sailors on new hires, but if it's going up, if the norm is a 5 to 6% increase, that's perhaps something we can no longer continue to afford in lean times.
Yeah. And all capital isn't created equal. It's almost like when you look at this, when the average person looks at it, you can weigh things, all season tires for the cruisers, I'll give that as a good example. That's an absolute necessity. You've got to have the cruisers with the tires, but you weigh it against carpet. Well, carpet can be frayed, it's a visual thing. So I almost wish, and I know, I talked to Paul, there were 2 pots in the past of capital. One was more of a recurring capital and that would be something, tires would fall into that, because it's a safety, really.
Well,
Roofs, safety, but I realized we steered away from that years ago. I wasn't here then, and I know there were
Can always
valid,
be revisited.
there were probably
That's
valid
your
reasons
decision
why we
once it
steered
is.
away from having that type of 2 capitals. How many pots do we need? But I've also seen, and this is why I wanted to have a working group going forward, just to kind of discuss how we do this, but where here's the budget, let the departments decide what they want to do with it. But that runs into problems in the
Good luck
past.
to you.
Well,
Good luck
I'm
to
just,
you.
throwing things here.
Seen that movie before.
Right.
And,
So the other thing I just want to say on this, it's not like this was the starting point. This already involved cutting things out. So
Correct.
let's not think that, okay, everybody gets everything, and now we've gone through and made some cuts that aren't necessary. There were already cuts made before this, so there were already things that we pushed out before this.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make
That's a
sure
good
we're
point,
clear
Betsy.
on that.
Well, okay, nothing to be clear on is that number was already, the pared down was known to be, I don't know how many dollars, tens of thousands, 100,000 above what we had budgeted for.
Yeah,
So it was,
absolutely, and like you said, if you say yes to everything, then something's wrong. I totally agree with that, and everybody knows how the game works, and so you have a longer,
but that wasn't an imbalanced list either.
Right.
That was a step in the process,
Right,
which,
yes, right, exactly.
That's why you guys get the big bucks.
yeah.
But,
I'd
but-
like to add
No, go
that
ahead.
once the facilities manager
By the way, that's
is
one we
on
didn't
board,
fund.
and when is that gonna be? The facilities manager, is that gonna be in?
No idea. Should have been here 10 years ago.
We have to still work on the job description, we have to talk to the school department, there's some work to do, and
Well, once
And
he's,
there's been a pretty good idea recently floated, which we probably need to talk in conjunction with you
So
folks
is-
offline.
but
that in
once he's on board, we're gonna
He or
revisit,
she, our last one was,
we're gonna revisit that 20-year needs assessment that was done in 2013, because a lot of those projects have been deferred because it's off the radar screen. So, when he comes back on board, or when he comes on board, we can sit down and work with him on that, and he can go from department to department, or building to building, and identify which projects are gonna be critical.
make this process a lot easier.
Right,
Yeah.
we budgeted for that in 2018. Is that budget carried forward in 2019? Is it carried forward in the 2020? I don't remember seeing it as a line item anywhere. Or are we adding
salary, the
somebody
headcount?
I don't know, you just voted
For
it.
this person,
Well, that's,
in there?
We did it for a
It's a question.
partial
You can
this
unvote
year,
it.
right?
okay.
Wasn't it
It
a
was
half year?
half year, or,
Half year this year?
That's right, yeah.
is it
I'm reminded by
Is
our
it in
deputy
for the
fire
whole
chief,
year?
it was actually funded in a half year in the current year, so next year it was
Right.
funded from the full.
Right.
It's funded for the full year, okay.
24/7.
All right, Parks?
Parks Department with 3 yeses.
That was because Alicia was strong enough to stay till the bitter end.
No, this is Chris.
This is Chris, yeah.
Okay,
School department was yeses down to the phone system. And then no's,
The rest were on
Phone
those?
system, got a yes or not?
for a total of $324,000.
So the phone system is included?
Yes,
yes.
Okay.
324,500.
Well, you'll be sending out the revised list anyway, right?
Okay, cemetery?
Cemetery was a yes on the mower and a no on the container.
Yeah, I walked, I walked with TC, this kind of the Hartwell area that was given to us. That's something that has to,
You want to put the cork up there?
yeah, why not? That's different. No, so, looking at that plan, we haven't really put that into,
Anywhere.
right, and that's a multi-million-dollar project to get that cleared, leveled, it fit for
Usable. Right.
Brave, so.
Well,
And we've got about 5 years of growth, of people dying before the cemetery's filled up. So that's coming, so it needs to be on our radar. But what he
They
had,
still have additional property.
he does, yeah.
Yeah.
Needs work.
We talked about, he had drawn up a plan that could save us a lot of money and buy us more time. I mean, it would be more like an $80,000 area where we could clear. And so it's something that we definitely need to think about, so.
we should encourage him to bring it forward.
Yes,
so
and I
it can
told
be
him-
reviewed by the selectmen.
We've been briefed, and very, well, at least I've been briefed, I'd say, the full board hasn't, but very happy with his foresight on that, and,
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's an $80,000 project, get it in there, yeah.
So it's just something, but regardless whether that happens, I think we have to really start looking about, kind of like we want to do with the fire engine back, is a couple $100,000 a year, put into it, so we can, that we don't have to swallow that whole pill once,
Okay. Good.
For the library, we have the $1.5 million borrowing, and this was the $300,000 placeholder for the capital stabilization. So it's $300,000 under the library.
That's a yes.
That's a yes.
So it's,
it really
It's not
should be
one-
Essentially, it's
1.5
a deposit into the capital
capital
stabilization.
stabilization.
Yeah.
This is
Right.
not where it appears in the budget, but
shouldn't
that's
even be here.
a reference point in the event.
Okay, but there is an article for $1.5 million to borrow
At the special, yes.
in the special, right? Okay,
Doesn't affect the capital plan.
okay. So we strike this 500, make it 300 for the annual,
300,
and the 1.5 is a borrowing article for the special.
correct.
And the 3 million for the senior center is just a transfer,
I'm sorry?
essentially.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's a warrant article, but if we're gonna be referring to the library, I mean, we were considering both the library and council on aging needs at the same time, and in that case, rather than, I mean, we could have got complicated and given $1.5 million in each direction, but since the $3 million, that's the baseline for what the council on aging seems to need, was what was readily available in the capital stabilization account, the article for directing that to the eventual council on aging and senior center building is the way we decide to approach that.
why wouldn't you borrow more than the 1.5 mil? Because isn't the project a lot more than that?
It's their design money, I mean, that's their call, not ours, really, is what they're requesting, the library. Is Mark still here?
Well, it's professional
Oh, Mark's here.
services in
Professional
advance of construction. Yeah.
This is a normal.
This is
rate.
to get construction
But for the
numbers.
police station and the fire
Yeah.
station,
Yeah, we've done it
you
that way with all.
funded the
Just on the timeline.
design, and then when you have a pretty good idea.
Same
what
with the
project
sewer,
is-
did it that way,
Right,
too.
oh, the same thing, absolutely. Yeah, so, I mean, that's,
Understand.
okay.
Park and Rec, the
yep.
50,000 is a yes, and
Yep.
the rest of the items are no's.
Okay, and some of this is being funded through CPC,
That's correct.
so, okay.
Some of the 50,000.
No,
No, no,
the next
it-
two items, the
The,
25 and
the
60,
the dock,
Okay.
and I don't know whether.
in the parking lot.
The parking lot.
Oh, not a Fay Park, no, actually, that one's not there, it's
No.
King Street they're doing
King
parking.
Street, there's some.
Right, this one is just put off for a
So
while.
that's just no.
So just the two, with the 60,000 and the.
Right, so those are two that probably won't roll over. So that's,
Well, no, the parking at Fay Park, that's still a request. That's not, they're doing parking at King Street through CPC, not Fay Park.
300, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They want to do more parking down there.
good.
So that brings our total funded to 2,211,000. We had a budget of 2,212,000. So $1,000 remaining, which would,
Okay.
Good job.
Let's spend it.
That's, yeah, let's go on.
Exactly.
Come on, let's close the meeting and let's head out.
We put it in capital stabilization, saying we're taking 3 million out.
Well, we're taking 3 million out one end, we're putting 300,000 back in the other. Such a deal.
Such a deal.
Yeah, I mean, the discussions about that, I mean, it's if somebody have another way that makes more sense. I mean,
But your options,
I mean,
your options are fund it when they know what it really is.
yeah,
Override, I mean, that's an option, not a tasteful option, but an option. Or do what we're suggesting to do. I mean, those are the only, unless you think of any.
No, when the dust
those are
settles,
the options.
you're absolutely right, Fred, but let's not lose sight of the fact that we're not actually spending any of that money. We're putting it in an account that it's gonna
Right.
require a 2/3 vote to get at.
right.
I mean, it's toward a plan, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's not gonna get spent until somebody votes 2/3 to direct it either the way we're intending to do it or however the town wants to do it.
Well, but leaving it in capital stabilization does exactly the same thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
What
That's
you're
not-
saying, just leave it and don't put it into some special other
Oh,
stabilization fund
I,
that now you have to spend it
Yeah,
on that particular item.
well, at the end of the day, either way is gonna require a 2/3
Well,
vote to
the
get it out.
two-thirds, but if you put it in earmark, then it's earmarked.
And that's a conscious decision, and I think we wanted to make that level of commitment to the project.
And
Yeah, I mean,
That's okay.
Yeah.
But do you do the whole 3 million, or do you do 1 million? That's a pretty serious commitment to doing the project, until you know what the project really is gonna cost.
On the best information we have from the Space Needs Committee, the 3 million is the baseline of what it would take. That's what would probably fund the simplest solution. It could be more, we're very conscious of that,
Very
but it's not gonna be
Very
less.
likely to be more.
Right, but it's not gonna be less.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion that anybody wants to have on capital?
We sat through it, so,
Hmm?
you and I sat through it, so we kind of witnessed it all. But,
I was watching it at
Do you-
home,
those that
it
didn't
was
see it, do you
riveting.
Agree with it? Or don't agree with it?
I mean,
I hope you had a cocktail.
They're doing a jigsaw puzzle.
like I said, I didn't want to get into a agreement with the selectmen on what they cut and what they didn't cut. Mine was more, the way that we do this business needs to stop
Right.
going forward. This can be done so much better. It's almost embarrassing, the way that
Well,
it
is-
comes about. I think we can
is there
really
anything-
do
is
this
there-
better.
But is there anything that was cut that ENBC or planning board or fire really think shouldn't have been cut and should be swapped out for something that the selectmen, in their infinite wisdom, decided to put together?
Finite, very finite.
I mean, I think at the end of the day.
And that's what we're here for, is to
Right.
recommend to town meeting, just like the selectmen are there to recommend to town meeting. And if we're in agreement, great. If any of you aren't, then now's the time to speak up.
Well,
I'm asking.
my one comment is, we're pushing out the ambulance. I mean, we talked about, additional revenues if it's down. My concern is somebody dies because we don't have an ambulance, right? Now, but if the chief is okay and chief agreed to it, then I guess we go forward. But I mean, that,
Yeah, vehicles, I think, are one of those things that unfortunately, when you're really looking at cuts, it's like, because we all drive vehicles, right? So you
Yeah.
think, all right, get one more year out
yeah,
of
I
it,
know.
right? You're hoping, there's a
you
risk.
hope, right.
So, yes, what is
You're
that?
thinking like Jimmy
So-
Clyde.
Yeah, but I mean, I know towns that are in a
but
much
if the snowplow's down,
worse
it's different than if an
situation than
ambulance
us
is
that
down.
will try to ride these vehicles out a lot longer and.
Maybe not. Maybe that was a bad example. A mower.
I'll just
let the grass
offer
grow.
again, it's more repetitive, I mean, it was with consideration, and it's also with, consideration of the age of the vehicle, the amount of use that these
Right.
go through, and the fact that we have to. And it's not that we ever intend to not fund it, it's just, okay, next year we'll get one of them, and then hopefully we can wait a couple of years on the other one, maybe we can't, but at least we're not getting two in the same year.
That's a couple of years on the other one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as predictable as the
Police.
cruisers,
Right.
which are cruisers are on the road 24/7, and the admin vehicles, which, what do we have, two of them, they get replaced at twice the lifespan of the cruisers. That's kind of a no-brainer, it works.
And, what we suggested to the chief was that he come forward with a documented plan that says, yes, I want to get to a 6-year cycle, an 8-year cycle, whatever you guys agree.
In their defense, I mean, they do have a 10-year cycle, and
He's been pushed out, this is the second year he's been pushed
and they
out.
also have other thoughts as to, an alternate way to even handle what's, in the plan. So outside of the budget cycle, committed to working with the fire department on that.
In the police
So
vehicles.
when Paul's F-150 shows up at your door, climb in, they'll take you to the
10
hospital.
years of good service out of F-150s, I'm now driving a Ram, what is it, 1500, but it's a 2003.
Yeah, I'm driving a 12-year-old car too, so.
So I guess my concern is not so much, I mean, if we're balancing the budget, we need to push things out to make things work, then that's one thing. But when we're pushing things out so that we can buy more stuff inside the levy, so that we have more capital that we need to maintain, and we don't have the money to maintain it, that's the bigger picture that bothers me, that makes me uncomfortable.
Well, that's why the first thing you look at, I look at, is the safety stuff, and that's why I mentioned roofs and these type of things, that everything else, unfortunately, there's a lot of visual on here, right? There's
Yeah.
visual on here that we kept that I didn't necessarily agree with. I won't, won't call out a lot of these things, but that got approved for yeses that, but once again, it wasn't enough to say, well, it's not a safety thing, it's just a decision that,
Well, to that point, there's $235,000 worth of computers and books for the schools.
Yeah, and
Do they have to change the computers out, or can they wait a year?
yeah. That's a fair question. That goes a long way with other items. And once again, if we met in November and had this discussion and sat down and got, hey, let me see these computers, we could probably be much more educated on that. Yeah, let's get another year out of them, Not everybody's gonna be happy about it, but that's gonna be our reality going forward.
It is.
Some of the bigger ticket items can go a long way with these.
Yeah.
A request like that can fulfill, 6 or 7 other things, so.
Right, but to go.
But I don't know that, we're just guessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
But that-
I don't like to
that's
guess.
just one example of what you could do with $250,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
We
guess,
sort of gummed this thing to death, I think.
Well, it's a big deal, I did, the selectmen, you sat there, it wasn't hours of idleness, they were working it and talking it, and it was painful to watch, and probably more painful if you're a manager to watch. And that's, in the end, who I felt bad for was you're watching your budgets get cut, at the 11th hour, if you will, as opposed to knowing this
Requests.
a few months ago. Requests, thank you. Yeah. So anyway, that's,
Okay.
digress.
Anything else from anybody?
I don't want to beat this thing to death, and I already spoke to Maren about it, but I'm happy to hear that we're going to see a 5-year plan for the spending on this project.
And when, in ballpark, could we expect to see you come back with that?
That'll be up to the master plan implementation committee to work on that.
And since Mike's in the back, you have an idea when that might be done, Mike?
I would say we probably could get it done within the year. The first cut.
Greg, can you?
I just want to remind everyone here that there are 67 items.
Yeah, I know.
I know there's a lot,
It is-
I know there's a lot
and-
to it, but what my concern is we've already allocated almost with this 24,000, we'll be pushing on a $500,000.
$500,000
And we're putting $500,000 in, but how much more do we need to, it just seems like we're getting nickeled and dimed as we go along by in $50,000 increments.
Where you're,
There's a difference here, excuse me, ma'am, there's a difference here between projects that consume because they are services, et cetera. There are a number of projects that are basically either stimulate or will be revenue generators for the town. So I have to distinguish between those two.
Understand.
And that's what the plan is going to try to address, to distinguish clearly for everyone. I mean, we're not making policy here, that certain projects have the ability to generate revenue for the town. In other words, dollars in as opposed to simply dollars out. So the plan or the approach that we're taking has to do with its economic value or impact. And I would just encourage this group, and you're trying to develop a new way to do business, to start thinking to incorporate that approach in your analysis as well. Because just because we're gonna give it a try because it works so well for what we've been trying to do with the common, that was a very, very important step that we took. I'm glad that we did it. We not only looked at the common from the point of view of what does it need, but what's the payoff for the town?
I totally get it. I guess my point is, from this side of it, we've already written the checks for 450,000, allocated that money, allocating another 24. How much more are we gonna allocate? I mean, is this an open checkbook where we're gonna be asked for money? I just don't know. So I'm looking for your guidance so that we understand that, so we know how much more we're investing in our town to grow, so that we can have a plan to fund this. I wanna make sure we're supporting it in the right manner, that's all.
Greg,
Yeah.
No, are you okay being the touch point for the Fincom? Because I mean, you're passionate about this, and I think it's an excellent topic.
Sure.
If you guys are, putting that together and have questions, or have, maybe Greg sends you a memo saying, I'd like to see these 2 or 3 things, What do we spend the 450 on? What do you see? I don't know what you would ask, but I just, so that we can.
I'm all for investing in Littleton and making it a better place. I just want to know what we're investing in, and it just seems like it's a growing number. And, when I saw this number a couple of months ago, which was 3 requests, I think it was 165,000, and that's when I asked Bonnie, how much have we already allocated? And there was an awful lot already allocated. I'm like, where are we going with this? So I just want to make sure I understand that, so I can
You're
support
not the
you.
only one that's thinking about that. A lot of us been thinking about that. The other issue with that, it worries me, and maybe I'm totally off base, but so many of the studies that we're doing on the common, I feel are only viable if the sewer goes in. And I'm not convinced that the sewer is ever gonna go in. And so I think we should be a little bit careful about doing plans that if the sewer goes in and it's 6 years from now, that we have to redo those plans all over again because all the data is 6 years or 4 years out of date. And that happens. It happens with the library. You've got now to go back and look at things because it's been 3 years since you looked at them. So when we're doing the implementation, that always has bothered me. What's the solution? Maybe your plan is a solution. But if that sewer doesn't go in, everything that I've seen so far is not viable up there. And maybe I'm wrong, but I just want to reiterate what you were saying.
So that's what I'm looking for, is just to
So
understand.
to close on this, you guys okay using Greg as a touch point for us? If you have questions, or you have I'm sorry, Mara, yeah, I mean.
Expired over you.
We're always okay
No,
with
it's on
Greg.
the plan.
That's why we appointed him here.
Right. No, but just, I mean, it's something that he's passionate about, so why not have him be the touch point? You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have my contact.
Okay, anything else on the capital?
I mean, I think the working group did a good job at, you know, making those tough decisions, and, that's at this point.
Did any manager come forward to anyone on this board and say, this was an absolute, deal breaker? Did you have anyone come to you and say this? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
But,
I mean, if there's a short list of items like that we want to talk about, but other than that, I mean, it's balanced, it's not easy. And from what I've been told, this was a really short list 20 years ago. So it's,
yeah, and it's gonna get shorter next year.
yeah.
And
And
it wasn't that long ago, we were doing two-day town meetings and voting for trucks with the operational over, or,
Right,
you know,
so-
debt exclusion over, capital overrides, whatever.
So, resolution.
And I don't wanna go back
Go
there.
back to that.
I don't wanna go back to that.
Okay, anything else? The motion?
Move that we approve the capital plan as discussed.
Second.
Motion, her second? Okay, second. A motion and a second. Any further discussions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a 6-0 there. Great.
As always, a pleasure doing business with you folks.
it's relatively painless.
We fight and then go aye.
No, I think the one cherished legacy we carry on from, as the characters change, is consensus. If we can get to consensus, I feel good about things, and that's good.
You know, my concern is not this year, it's the next 2 years.
Yep.
And I hope the assessors are wrong, because if they aren't, it's gonna get really, the cheese is gonna get really binding.
Mhm.
So, good. All righty, member updates? Quicker on the horn here.
Are we gonna go through these articles tonight, or not gonna do that tonight, or?
Well, that's
It's a
you're up
timeline
for it
here.
We have,
Do they have to be,
well,
a recommendation, have to be?
same timeline, correct? By the 9th of April?
Yes,
Yeah.
go to print overnight.
I'm fine with you guys voting without me
Fred
on a
will be
second.
here on the 2nd.
Second, I should be on second, yes. Should be on second.
Yeah, second is our next scheduled meeting. I won't be here. I have no issue with you voting the articles, I really don't.
Well, if you have an issue, let us know.
Well, I can go through it and
Yeah.
send any concerns I have out, but I don't. Let's see.
I know last year you sniped me, so read the fine print on all those.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. Are there any more adjustments that need to be made to these articles, or is this the
well, Article,
final draft before we make?
Article 3 on, let's just take a
Okay.
quick cut through. Yeah, I think there's some that are really kind of no-brainers.
You looking for special or the annual now?
On the annual.
Okay.
Article 3 is the revolving funds.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got- Yeah, was there gonna be a revolving fund set up for alumni?
There's not one required under the statute, so the one that they have for school and building use facilitates that, but we've created a separate line item to track alumni fee
Okay.
revenues.
Okay, so that will, any funds flowing through there will be identifiable?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I look for any discussion on Article 3, any of the,
Already seen it.
look for a motion?
So, just one quick
Yeah.
point here. On the spec pond cell tower funds, is that being pulled out after it goes through CPC, so we get the match, or prior?
The spec pond cell tower funds are used to fund the Clean Lakes Committee expenditures. So that 50,000 is just a top line expenditure amount. What's actually being spent out of that for next year will be 46,000, and it's in the operating budget. So this just allows that 46,000 to come out.
But does it go through CPC first?
No.
This is
So we don't get the
No,
match
this is
on it?
different.
space.
This
This
is
not
different
the
money.
open
Got
space
it, all
fund.
right, just making sure, got it.
Motion that the FinCom vote to approve Article, recommend
Yeah, we gotta always recommend.
Article 3
As presented.
as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. Article 4, we already voted. Debt exclusion fund for FY 2020. And this is to pull excluded debt inside 2.5. It saves 18 cents, 17 or 18 cents per thousand.
This
on the
year,
tax
it's
bill.
estimated around 15, I believe.
15 cents, okay, so, and this is a continuation of.
Pushed out
This
to-
is what, our fourth or fifth year that we've done this?
We 2025, 26?
25.
25.
So here's the question on that. Maybe it's a stupid question, but given that we want to do everything inside the levy, and we're also reducing the tax bill at the same time, I mean, should we just not do this and use this money other places instead? Keep it, I mean, what is it, how much, you know?
It's, you can go ahead and answer from your side. I remember talking to the auditor about this. We brought it up. The auditor brought it
I
up.
remember his response,
That's
too.
why it's kind of, it's one of those things, not a smart political move to talk about, but from a financial perspective, he had mentioned, just something to think about when you're doing well, you tend not to do anything with your taxes. And unfortunately, it's when times go bad and you have to, all of a sudden the tax bill, and people are taking a double hit. And this is, I know it's a scary thing, but it's the time when you should be thinking about,
But is this $300,000 that we could put in capital stabilization instead?
so, that's all.
It would take a two-thirds vote to take it out of debt exclusion
Because it's
stabilization.
in debt exclusion specifically for this
Debt
purpose.
exclusion stabilization can be used for either reduce existing debt
Yeah.
or reduce a debt excluded project. So you could apply it to the project before you go out to borrow, reducing the cost to borrow.
Okay, so, and this is,
There's $700,000 in the account right now, which gets us to 2025 as far as keeping the debt service level to that thing.
so if we didn't vote this, that money just stays in the fund
If we
then?
didn't vote this, the money would stay in the fund and the tax rate would increase.
It would increase?
Yeah,
15 cents, yes, from where this would take it down.
right.
We're reducing the tax rate right now by doing this.
In effect, this is paying the override inside 2.5.
Absolutely.
Well, part of it.
But yeah, that's paying it, right.
That's the 300,000.
That was the danger of doing this. It was the idea, if you're gonna pick a year to do this till and keep it level, you have to maintain that, because as soon as you don't,
Then it goes up.
then you have a spike in your tax rate.
So, yeah.
Sounds like we're voting for it.
So we're not,
well, even if we voted no, I don't think.
right now, there's nothing scheduled to go into the account to extend that.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Right now, there's nothing going into the account to extend that to FY '26.
Right.
So we're at FY '25 right now.
I guess the question is, what's the breaking point? Where does that money, is that money thought of as always the right thing to do? And I know there's a camp that says, no, it isn't always the right thing to do. And until you can't do it anymore,
Right, yeah,
and then
yeah,
it's the
that's-
worst time that you.
Right, exactly.
So that's why, I know we've talked about it, so. But I don't wanna look 5 years from now and say, we told, it's,
Well, Betsy can say that.
we buy 5 years of, the tax rate not going up, then at least we bought 5 years.
Okay.
So to put it in perspective, 15 cents on a $500,000 assessment would be $75 a year.
Yes, that's a good way to, for the viewers to understand what that means to your home,
Yeah, so, you know, for,
which isn't,
So do you take a small bite now and, you know, do it incrementally?
But that's every year.
well, we do it every year, we push this out, it's just, what is the?
we have it covered up to 2024, 25. So it's not like, you know, if we don't do it this year, it's,
Right.
the roof's gonna fall in. And where do these funds come from, Bonnie?
We had appropriated them from free cash over the past few years.
Okay, so our policy says if it doesn't go to this, it goes to another non-operational activity.
The capital.
How does that
Oh, we could
impact
put it to capital
bond rating?
stabilization.
Yeah, no, absolutely, but that's.
Once we get over the 7.5% limit on free cash, the policy says that we need to fill in stabilization buckets first, and then you get to capital to spend.
So how would this
So
impact?
OPEB, regular stabilization, debt exclusion stabilization, get funded before additional capital.
Steve, any thought on bond rating if we move this money out, what that might be? Would it have any impact
They
on-
look at any stabilization account as a reserve. So
Right.
anytime we're decreasing reserves, they're gonna ask about it, as long as they're not being replenished during the next fiscal year.
Okay, any other thoughts, questions, comments?
I'm gonna do a lot more research on it this year, so next year I'll be a little more educated on the vote, get real numbers, that's all.
Okay,
Motion to recommend Article 5 as written, use of debt exclusion stabilization fund for FY 220 excluded debt.
Second.
okay, I have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes? Any opposed? Okay. Okay, we voted Article 6 already, that was the Water Enterprise Fund. Park and Rec Commission Enterprise Fund. And this, again, is just basically what they bring in and how they spend it. Any discussion, questions, comments?
I'll make a motion, if there isn't any discussion, I'll make a motion to recommend Article 7.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on Article 7, Park and Recreation Enterprise Fund. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Article 8 is the capital funding that
We did it, right?
we did it per the spreadsheet. I don't, Anthony?
That's not reflected.
Does,
Let's just skip it.
So
yeah,
then
Anthony?
Yes.
Article 8.
Article 8 does or does not reflect the capital spreadsheet.
Revised selectmen version.
I don't know off the top of my head. I think Steve had said earlier that it needs to be adjusted, so I would say the answer is
Okay,
no.
so-
I would say no.
You know,
Okay, so we agreed to the
So we'll-
spreadsheet.
We'll forward that spreadsheet off and.
Bill.
As amended with the
drop-
spreadsheet, we can do it, right?
Amended.
Yeah,
With the updated spreadsheet.
with the updated
Okay.
spreadsheet.
Okay, if you want to word, if any, first of all, any discussion on capital, I think we've gummed it to death, but if there's any other discussion, okay, then I would entertain a motion on this as it ties to the agreed-upon spreadsheet.
I'd make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 8 pending that it's reconciled with the spreadsheet we reviewed tonight.
Okay, Anthony, you're okay, you got that, you'll square this away?
Yeah, I'm gonna work on
Okay.
it tonight.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
Who seconded it?
I did.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, CPC, this one might be a little more interesting. First question I have on CPC is traditionally, I say over the last 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, we've been able to fund the 3% for match. It's 1% surcharge from people's taxes.
Yeah, automatic.
And that's automatic was voted. And 2% out of other funds. You know, the cell tower funds and other non-operating funds that Bonnie has been able to come up with. We're not able to do that this year. How much are we able to do this year?
$42,000.
42,000. Okay, so CPC, we're, over the last 4 or so years, we'd be getting in the neighborhood of 600,000, which would be matched by the state at some percentage. This year, it will be something in the order of 250 to 300,000, because it's the 1% of the, what's the levy?
It's supposed to, it's 300, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, how much is the levy?
The 1% surcharge is 300,000.
Okay,
So we need to
So-
appropriate another 600,000 to
right,
get to the vote.
okay, so, instead of, you know, close to 800,000 or 900,000 going in there, there's only 340,000 going in there. Because we're able to bring 42,000, cell tower?
Cell phone.
42,000 from cell towers,
Okay. But we don't have the other
mitigation funds.
funds available that we traditionally have had,
There's
so.
still state matching though, too.
I'm sorry?
There's still some state matching though, too.
There'll be some.
No, absolutely, all I'm
Right.
saying is the CPC is not gonna
Right.
be filled at the rate it's
Definitely not. Yep.
traditionally been
Yep.
filled. And it's being drained
Yep.
at a fairly substantial rate,
Yep.
with the housing piece is 500,000 or something like
Yeah,
that.
it is.
yeah,
That's
it is.
$500,000.
But that's housing. I mean, you're not gonna be using it for anything else anyway,
Oh,
but,
no,
right.
absolutely,
right.
but I'm saying, you know, that what, you know, people tend to think that CPC is a bucket that you can go after.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna have to start refilling the housing bucket. Park and Rec are collecting,
Yep.
how much from it?
61,000, is that right? Recreation reserve?
My numbers here.
Yeah, okay. So they're drawing, what is the total drawdown of CPC funds? The big one is the 500,000 to the
Right.
community
Yep.
housing reserve.
300,000 for the, or 250 for the King Street parking, and 120 for the Long Lake renovation.
Pushing 800, almost 800.
You're over 800.
Okay, so that it's coming down pretty well, so that all I'm saying is where we've been able to use CPC as a cushion for some capital spending, that cushion is becoming a whoopee cushion. You know, again, going forward, it's being pulled down, so capital's coming down, CPC's coming down, just a watch out
Yeah,
going
well,
forward.
it's all trends we predicted, it's just
Well, but
where,
well, the one thing that wasn't predicted was the Affordable Housing Trust Fund at 500,000.
But that's not, whether CPC we're spending that directly or it's going to the trust fund, it's for housing, that's the only thing it can be used for.
My understanding, the first thing they want to do is put a voucher program out.
It's one of the things that they intend to do with it, that's true.
And I'm not sure that a voucher program fits the definition of CPC funding.
Eligibility.
pretty clear that it is, but,
Yeah,
I mean, I haven't done the research myself, but I mean, they've been,
If you're comfortable it is, then I'm okay with it. But my concern is that the town is turning $500,000 over to a subcommittee of the selectmen,
that the town set up, that the town voted to set up for
Right.
this purpose,
right? And,
because it's not practical for the CPC to be giving out money for housing like that. I mean, they would be
Okay.
doing other, other types of things like we've done
Restoration.
at the apartments and so on, so.
with,
Yeah.
that money will be spent with nobody coming back to the town to spend it.
No, part of the provision is that they do have to come back, well, they have to come back to CPC and explain how they've spent it
After the fact.
after the fact, and that would determine, if it's not acceptable, then they're not gonna get any more. But again, it was set up by the town. I mean, I have some of your same reservations, Fred, so I'm playing the other side here
That's
too.
fine, absolutely.
But the fact is that trust fund and that group was set up by the town, it was voted by the town to do this. It is not practical, if some of this is, it's not practical for CPC to be doing a lot of these things for housing because they're not fast enough. It takes too long if somebody needs something, and if that's what those funds are there for, it just, the process to get it out of CPC is too long, and CPC is not gonna decide, gee, should, this person get a housing voucher, or, should we,
Yeah.
it's
No,
not.
this-
No,
It's just a
the-
practical way to use that money.
How much is left in the housing bucket?
Nothing,
Okay, so it's taken 10 years
yeah,
to build up 500,000.
yeah.
Mm.
You're not gonna spend it all in one year,
Going
that's not the
forward-
idea.
no, Going forward.
Yeah,
CPC will be able to only put 10%, I think it's 10% minimum,
20
into, so this year it's gonna be
20%.
30,000.
20% goes into housing.
20% this year, okay, so 60,000 goes in. So CPC is likely not to be the major contributor
Right.
to this going forward. I don't know what it is, whether it's grants, whether it's,
It's appropriated funds,
Basically,
whatever it
seniors.
turns out.
I mean, all
I
it
think,
just is, I can
the-
just see this bolus coming in, people
No,
feeling
I
like.
think the
they're
Housing
out of
Trust folks, and again, Cindy Napoli represents our board on that, and Housing Authority is, what's that? Yeah, that's right, and they're very much conscious of that, but they're also conscious of that the amount that's been accruing in there, is too small to actually go out and buy a, property of any significance. So this seemed to be the,
What significance is it?
the best game plan for using that money
Right.
in a timely fashion that can actually have meaningful benefit for, people on a housing level.
And my concern is that they start a program that the town's gonna be on the hook to continue to fund, because once you start doing housing vouchers and support to people that need it, and I'm not questioning the need.
And
I'm questioning in a timeframe that the town looks like it's gonna come into at least some belt tightening, if not tough times, in the next 3 years.
Not being on the Community Preservation Committee nor on the Housing Trust, at a disadvantage to defend what they're
Yeah,
proposing,
no,
but
I just,
I think given a little notice, they would have been prepared to,
No, this
make
is-
an accounting of themselves.
I don't think I don't think Fred's attacking the fund, it's just the realization that this is another one of those things that we're gonna have to find other funding, ways to fund it, to keep it going.
Potentially.
This type of thing is what makes a community great. This is a fantastic
Well,
program.
back to procedural, Gary, if, a review of that plan
Yeah.
is what's, in order, then they probably ought to be invited in to make a presentation on that score and have that conversation, rather than just talking about it when they're not in the room.
Yeah, but it's like everything, I mean, all these buckets are
well, they're draining.
dwindling fast, and so,
Right, and one of the tools that we have in place to replenish the housing bucket is the inclusionary zoning
Yeah,
bylaw that we
thank
passed last year.
Yeah.
And so when developers need to pay a payment in lieu of
That'll be
an
lump sum,
affordable
sure.
unit on site, then that sum would go to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah.
So there's that potential.
So the first question you're gonna get asked at town meeting on this is, the voucher program, will it be Littleton residents only? Or will it be like everything else in housing, open to everybody?
The housing trust is,
I think
will
we
be
just gotta look at it as face
setting,
value. what it is.
we'll be making some of those policy decisions. And
I couldn't hear you.
The housing committee will
That's my
be
concern.
making some of those policy decisions and have a format available to,
No, that's well and good, but my question is this, since it's talking about housing vouchers, is state law gonna be prohibitive and make it be open to everybody that's already on a list someplace that can come in and apply for vouchers, or will it be just Littleton?
again, it's your housing trust that will be making those policy choices and.
Well, I wanna hear that decision before I vote on it.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people in Pine Tree Park that are not from Littleton.
Well, now they are.
That's
They
my
are
point.
now.
Well, but they came from outside, right?
Yep, that's my
That's
point.
a
You know,
state- it's a
The only
state-
reason, that's because state law requires it.
No, that's,
And I'm saying,
That's my point.
is this gonna be the same thing? Is state law gonna be governing this?
Why don't we have Cindy
Yeah, well, yeah.
brief us on the second before we vote on it? How's that?
that's fine.
I know you won't be here,
No, it's
but
fine,
That's a
absolutely.
great idea.
You know, I'm,
Cindy or.
I'm fine with it as long as people understand that going forward, the funding mechanism for this is likely to be much less
yeah.
than this. And CPC funds, it's gonna be a while before there's any meaningful CPC funds in the housing bucket, that's all.
And as
The
I
biggest concern
understand
there
it,
is if
there's
if the vouchers are like short-term helping somebody out, but if it gets to be a long-term where every year they're getting it, and then all of a sudden, some year it's not available, then that's a problem. So, but it is, I mean,
And as I understand it, there's gonna be grants and stuff to help fund this too, so
So
I
let's-
think if they come in on the second.
Are these funds
give us a
managed by the
decision,
town?
I'll be a little more comfortable with it.
By the trust, by the town
By the
trust
trust.
fund managers? I don't know.
By the housing trust,
By-
which is a town account. I think that question was raised, Steve.
Yeah,
is that
it
correct?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it will be,
It can be, they have the choice not to.
Okay, but I believe that's already been
okay,
asserted that they would.
fine. So you guys will have Cindy in on the second, if she can make it, and I'm fine with that.
who's taking that action item?
Yeah.
Because I don't know with you not, who's doing the agenda to make sure that happens? I don't know, because you're not here, so.
I'll
Are
be
you doing
Vice
that?
Chair.
Okay,
That'll be an agenda item.
Yep, should be.
big shoes, Mr.
Yeah,
Vice Chair.
have her come in early and talk about it.
Yeah, before we vote. Hold on.
Okay, Article 10 is the personal bylaw.
Personal bylaw has a 2% salary increase in Schedule A, which is the full-time and part-time benefit eligible town employees. And then there's further schedules, Schedule B, B1, and Schedule D are all 2% increases also for those employees. Schedule C, the Park and Rec, is effective May 1st.
And we don't have to vote this in the
No.
special to do that, okay.
It's effective May 1st, and that's based on competition that Park and Rec has seen for some of their summer positions
Well,
And-
what percent increase is that?
for Schedule C.
Yeah, for Schedule C. Roughly.
There were pretty hefty increases there, but it's all
Competitive
program-based and
Yeah, I understand, I was just
pay
looking
it
to
through
see
their
if we knew
fees.
what it was off the top of your head.
And Schedule C1 is
And
is,
what are the step increases?
I'm sorry, pardon?
What, the whole scale went up 2%, what's the step increase? What percent? is the
On
step?
Schedule A,
Yeah.
2.5% in between.
Okay, so they get a 4.5% increase,
Yeah, I haven't gotten that.
True.
okay.
Good.
Okay, so there's 4.5% on your entire, basically your entire salary base, so shouldn't be surprised that your budget goes up 5%.
Yeah, so just out of curiosity, just historically, let's just wind back 5 years. Where were we at 5 years ago? Has this been a consistent increase?
This grid was redone 2 years ago, and the steps went from 3.5% down to 2.5%.
Okay, and then okay,
That was based on collective bargaining?
well, this isn't,
We added a step also at the end, but.
We added 2 steps.
Or 2 steps at the end.
so the 2% increase, the yearly, when were we flat last? When were we 0?
2% is based on the union contracts.
So you're matching the union contract for all employees?
Basically, yeah.
And that was a promise that the selectmen made to us
Yeah, it's not uncommon at all.
the last time the salary grid was redone 6
Just,
years ago.
Fred
It's
brings
been
up,
that way
it's a lot of money,
since.
that's all, and we,
Well, you know, it's compounding at 4.5%.
right, which is higher than any.
You know, so nobody should be surprised that your budget's going up 5%.
Yeah.
If your salaries are going up 4.5%.
Yep.
And that's the biggest nut in the salary.
But I mean,
What you don't see is the,
good for the collective
bring
bargaining,
it
I
up,
mean,
what you don't see is the school grid for the teachers, which is
right,
a lot more than this.
so we,
And on a much bigger budget, it's driving a higher percentage growth,
Right.
so. Okay. All righty, any other discussion on Article 10? Any motion or no?
let me just look for-
Hearing none, you can do it on April 2nd when I'm not here.
Yeah, so
You said you're still looking
the
at.
contract, how long's our contract? Is it a 3-year, 5-year?
This is year 2 of a 3-year contract with the unions.
And is it, and they negotiated 2.5%?
2 and 2,
2 and 2, okay. Is that, what was our last contract?
2 and 2.
Has it ever been lower than 2?
0, 0, and 0.
We've done 0, 0, 0.
Okay. And is that was based on the town being flat? Or was it,
Well, that
how did
was
it get negotiated? Because,
Well, it was the town and it was 2008.
Right,
yeah, okay. So it was very easy to see.
It was really,
Okay.
really tough times.
It might have to be 0, 0, 0.
No, we don't know what the cycle is. I mean, that's, we still got
I
another
believe it
year.
was 0 for
Yeah, it was,
4 years or
Yeah, it
maybe
was-
5 years
yeah,
in a
It was a
row.
while there. It was 0, I remember that.
These are the good old days, as they said.
yeah, no, I get it where you
Yeah,
can't,
so
get it where you
make
can't. No,
me
there's no
all
doubt,
the
it's
same.
just,
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve Article 10.
Recommend.
Recommend, oh yeah, sorry.
Okay, you're calling us
Duh.
out on recommending, you're over there approving it.
See if you're listening.
Approved as selectmen's
Second.
intention.
Yes.
it was second.
Yeah, Steve said.
Steve got
Did I
it.
have a
Steve
second?
got- Steve
Okay,
got a
I have
second.
a Motion and a second. Any further discussion on Article 10? Personal bylaw amendments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, it's unanimous.
She made a lot of friends with the town employees right there.
Next meeting.
Article 11, 12, and 13 are all stabilization authorizations.
Those a week off.
Can we vote those as a group?
Article 11 has $108,000 going in.
Okay.
Article 12 has $300,000 going into capital, and there will be no money going into the debt exclusion stabilization, so that will be
Okay.
withdrawn.
13 is gonna be withdrawn?
There's nothing right now scheduled to go in.
Paul, is that gonna be withdrawn then?
I don't have the article, for which article is that? 13?
Debt exclusion
Debt
Exclusion
stabilization.
Stabilization Fund, Article 13.
It's usually what,
I don't
1%?
think we had anything.
So, big W on that. Withdrawn. So we don't need to vote 13.
So are you gonna pull 13, or
Well,
if you're not gonna put any,
Well, we have till the 9th.
You know, I hate to speak out of turn, I would say that's fair to assume, but, I got 4 compadres, I gotta, you know,
okay,
it hasn't been planned for, discussion, it's more or less a placeholder.
Okay,
It's
so
We don't need to vote on that
We'll
one.
do 11 and 12,
Yeah.
and if something comes up in the future, you can vote
Put
on
it
it.
on, yeah, right.
Okay?
Yep.
Any discussion on 11 or 12? Okay.
We already talked about it, so vote to recommend Article 11, stabilization fund, and Article 12, capital stabilization fund.
Second.
Was there a second over there?
Second.
Okay, second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of Article 11 and Article 12, as written, plus the figure of $108,000 in the stabilization and $300,000 in capital stabilization, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Trust funds,
Trust fund commissioners are taking funds out to fund those two projects.
okay, and let's see. Okay. Any discussion on Article 14?
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 14 as written.
A motion and a second to approve Article 14 as written. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of Article 14 as presented?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay, it's unanimous. Senior Citizen Veterans Tax Work-Off Program.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 15 as written.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of, any other discussion? I'm sorry, any discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Chapter 90 funds, do we know what they are?
Yeah, it's just shy of 400,000, was it?
Yeah.
397.
Whatever was in the selectmen's package, 390.
Is that up or down or left or right?
Down.
About
Down.
2,000.
From, what was last year, ballpark?
It was
3,000 short of this year.
Oh, 3,000, it's down 3,000, he said.
So it's flat,
It was
okay.
400K last year.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on?
Make a motion, recommend Article 16, use of MassDOT capital, or Chapter 90 funds as written.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, unanimous. Planning board, we don't normally look at those. Rescind unused borrowing authorizations. This is just housekeeping cleanup. Any?
This really has no financial, this is it's just paperwork, basically, right? Is that right?
Can't spend it.
Right.
Can't spend it anymore.
No spending.
Okay.
Or it would have already been spent before it got here.
All right.
So get rid of it before you spend it anymore.
Right.
Any question,
I
concern?
have a question, but it probably is more towards the selectmen. There's the talk of, one of the capital projects was expanding the parking at Fay Park. Why can't the fire station money be used to do that? Isn't it part of the same facility?
Here,
No?
It's on the other side of the road, isn't it?
They're not, I don't know where they were
Shaking
expanding the
their head
parking.
no.
Yeah, I think the parking that's being anticipated is right on
And on the
Foster
road.
Street. isn't
No,
it?
it's on the road. It's on,
the diagonal parking.
it's on the road next to the fire station, and that goes down to the, yeah, Wilderness, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still outside the bounds of
Outside
the
the bounds.
borrowing to
Yeah,
suggest that
four
that's what
corners
we're
of the
saying.
hall,
Are we
right?
confirmed?
Certain of that? Because the drawings that I saw were on Foster.
Yeah,
The
we
diagonal
did see
parking
some
one.
Foster.
Well, and the ones that I saw were the other, but it could have changed. I don't know,
But
they were
either way,
definitely.
it's, that wasn't the project as.
Right.
as
It's
funded.
not part of the scope of the
Right.
project.
It's a
You
good
can't
question.
use it for it.
It's a good.
It's a good, it's a very
thought,
good
but
question. It actually is.
You have to be really careful if you bond.
Yeah. Well-
to stay within the four corners of what that
Well, I was
lot
questioning
says.
where the corners were and where the parking was, so I don't know if anyone ever looked at it.
I think, are we just guessing?
Oh, we
Or
got
should we
two
talk to
experts
town
here in the
council?
room.
I mean, that's,
Steve, Bonnie, I mean, let's hear
You
it.
could
They're
not
different
use,
parcels, they're different owners.
okay, all right.
Because they're near each other,
Yeah.
don't make it work, I don't.
Some of the tar spilled over into it.
We can put our third, park our third ambulance up there.
The one that's broken down? Oh, sorry.
All right,
Look who's here, Chuck.
Throw it
Where'd you
away.
show 'em?
Okay, so, motion?
motion to recommend Article 18, rescind unused borrowing authorizations.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Yes. Bishop Valley, fixing the roof.
This one is,
We were at that meeting, so it was well explained. Did you go?
I didn't, I know what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're, I mean,
Yeah, their new finance team there is, they're on it, they're very good, and they explained this, the plan going forward, there's no surprises. As you know, the tech is one of the older schools around, and they've done very well keeping it together.
In fact, Charlie presented last week.
Yeah, he did, and he.
Explained it.
Yep, and he did a great job, and he also, they presented at the tech when we went.
Yeah, I see nothing untoward about this.
No, and it's split among the eight towns, and that's our share.
okay, well, yeah, each town has to vote.
The full dollar amount,
The
it's a
agreement.
scary number, we just have to make sure that the voters, the selectmen.
Understand that it really is nothing near this.
And Bonnie, what did you estimate our,
It would,
like
based on
4%,
our current
4
enrollment,
point-
it's probably gonna be, south of 40,000.
Yeah, it's
So
like, it was
our
like 4.5% or something.
our exposure on this whole thing's about 40,000.
Right, but it's tied to the population.
Population, right, if,
Move target.
if
Goes up and down every year, so.
Yep, so.
Okay, so if you want to make a motion, or any other comments, questions, concerns? I don't. Kind of a no-brainer.
Move to recommend approval of Article 19, Neshoba Valley Technical High School Building Project, borrowing.
Second?
Okay, I have motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Can you imagine having to go out and get all those towns to approve something when you want to do that? I mean, we think our job is tough, man.
There's gotta be one. there's
We have a
gotta be
small
one or
bite
two
at the apple,
towns.
there's some,
Yeah.
have some pretty
There's
big
gotta be a
bite.
couple towns that have a big bite of this. apple.
Yeah, right.
Chelmsford and
Article
Westford,
20?
Take a big bite out of it.
Article 20,
Which one is that?
never heard of it.
sewer construction borrowing?
We're not gonna be.
No, so that's going to be pulled.
Yeah, that's placeholder. We have two other articles relative to the sewer, but the borrowing will be off to the fall. Won't affect the construction schedule, but we want to get the firm cost on the quirk, which is dependent on its location, and we're still doing due diligence on that.
Okay.
So that's the next one too, will be pulled probably, right?
21 is a voter petition.
There's a voter petition, but that's, we normally don't touch that. Home rule petition, that's, again, I don't see what we would find in that.
So the enterprise
guess
fund's being
I-
pulled? The sewer enterprise as well? 23? Is that
Yeah,
being
Paul, we could pull 23 too. Well,
Yeah.
we could pull the enterprise fund too.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with establishing the fund.
I think I would assume that we're gonna, we want to show progress, so we're gonna establish the fund. We're not gonna fund it yet, but.
Just have it.
Create it.
We're not touching 22, and we're kind of jumping up to 23. That's not a.
That's not a finance.
The home rule petition, the only potential financial benefit, as I understand it, is forcing the commercial people to hook up. Is that, I mean, that's what the home rule petition allows?
Establishes the sewer district.
Yeah, it's more about the
It's just the
district.
sewer district, it's
What's
not.
in and what's out.
Doesn't speak
Okay,
to the
but
money.
it doesn't force the commercial
That's, but we've already voted that as a policy decision, but that'll take effect within the financing of the plan itself.
Okay.
So this is just
So there is
districting.
no, so there's
No,
really
not
nothing
by
for
the
us to
whole
vote,
road, too.
nothing
Yeah.
for us to vote. Town moderator, term 1 to 3 years.
That's a no-brainer.
Who is he?
Borrow it, 35, borrowing authorization, it's, again, it's a housekeeping.
Yeah, 25 and 26 are housekeeping.
We pass this every year, so look for a motion on that.
25,
And
Yeah.
20, you can put them together.
26?
Yeah, 25 and
I'll
26.
make a motion that we vote to support 25 and 26.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So there's only a couple that you have to look at in a second.
Two.
The special, any bills?
There's
John?
gonna be one bill
One bill, okay.
to
Somebody
the
didn't pay
Commonwealth
the
of
bill?
Massachusetts for $2,400.
24. Wow, okay. Okay. We recommend paying our bills?
Recommend
Article 1,
article to,
How much is the bill again?
2400.
2,400.
vote to recommend Article 1, bills of prior years for $2,400.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Operating budget line transfers, don't know any of those? We don't?
I don't know any of them.
Okay, so
right now.
that's something you should look at on the second. And again, if we don't have them by then, we can vote it the night of town meeting. Chapter 90 funds, event, town meeting increasing. Oh, wait a minute.
So this was,
Yeah, where did the 477 come from?
so it was an election year for governor, so we got an additional $70,000 and,
Just like an election year for our selectmen, right?
what number you on?
It keeps going down. Article 3 on special.
Okay, that's all right.
So this year.
So there's your number from last year was 397, when you were asking earlier.
Right, so 397, and this year was gonna be
394?
Two or something.
94.
Yeah.
But there was another 100,000 came in.
Roads.
So last year was actually 477 for whatever reason. So he's gonna have 100,000 less to spend of chapter 90 funds this year than he had next year than he had this year. I mean,
Well,
that's just the fact.
Yeah, but he didn't expect it last year, so.
Right, but, okay. Okay,
Vote to recommend Article 3, use of Mass DOT Chapter 90 funds, FY 2019 supplemental.
second, have a motion and a second, further discussion, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye, unanimous.
So how does this work? So how long has he known, and does he just have from,
May,
how long does he have to spend that money?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. He has to spend it between town meeting and the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
In the end of
he's got
June.
that covered.
So he knows it's coming, so he just,
He does, he's known it coming.
he's ready.
He's ready.
So could he have put this 100 grand against the school,
Parking lot.
the school sidewalks?
Sidewalks?
You know, put another 100,000 back in, why?
Has to be roads.
Yeah, right?
Has to be roads.
So roads and sidewalks aren't, chapter 90?
No, it's like a
It's,
private parcel, a town parcel.
I would imagine it'd be different public roads compared to private town land.
Okay. So we should put toll booths going in and out of the school.
Gonna stay at 5 cents.
All righty. So this is accepting the appropriations into blended community preservation.
This will be the 42,000.
That's the 42 grand that we're gonna do this year,
It's the lowest it's up.
down from 600. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, what's your pleasure?
It is what it is, just, I vote to recommend the article as written.
Okay,
Second.
second, I have a motion and a second, any discussion? None, all those in favor, Article 4? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Library project borrowing,
Is the $1.5 million in borrowing for the design costs for the library.
so this is 1.5. Now, were you guys putting any money up at this
We put
point?
up 100,000.
I'm sorry?
We put up 100 to get the projects, we already put up 100 to get the project started.
Okay, so is this, should this be 1.4 instead of 1.5? I mean, I'm just, you know, if we've already covered 100. I don't
Well,
know.
From my perspective, I'd like to keep it at 1.5, because even though the library's put up 100,000, we're planning to go CM at risk, which means we have to bring the contractor on earlier than anticipated, so I think that extra 100,000 will cover his expenses
Okay.
prior to construction.
I don't know,
You
the
guys-
it hasn't been directly put before us, although I have had this conversation with Mark, so I'm aware that that's, you know, the conversations have been had with PMBC. So I mean, 1.5 was the number we've been
mean, that's
dealing with
what- okay.
anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, we did meet with the architect and the OPM on Tuesday last week, and they have, because of the advanced funding by the library, they have started work on the process of, you know, the next phase.
And this is all based on high probability of the July,
We are number one on the wait list.
Right.
I believe one of the libraries that was supposed to get the money last year didn't go forward, so,
okay.
so we're almost, we've been told, get ready.
So the design can hit the ground running right away then as soon as,
Well, that's what the
That's
meeting
why it's
on
the,
Tuesday was all about.
Special, not the annual, right?
okay,
Yep.
got it.
So the trustees put up the money so that we could get started before May even, so.
That's awesome, okay.
Okay.
So Steve, my question,
This-
is this 1.5 million in line with like what we funded for the fire station or police station, anything like that, or is it? It seems like a big number for a design to me.
Well, it's not just design, it's professional services, so it's the design, it's the OPM's budget, and it's gonna be the construction company's budget prior to construction.
So is that in line with what we spent on
I'm not-
fire? And
I don't know
you
what we did on the fire department, but, you know, the fire department was a different animal. We went design bid build, so we didn't have the CM at risk on board prior to bid documents. So it's different,
Yeah.
so I can't compare it.
So what you have in front of you, I just see a typo here in the language. It only says $300,000. Should say 1.5 million.
Well, I think it came from our cap, within our, that 300,000 came off. I saw that on a previous sheet.
No, that's the amount that was going into stabilization.
Right, I think that's where the confusion came from, probably. That's it.
It's 1.5 million, so.
Okay.
But there was talk of the 300K here.
And just to be clear, this isn't an increase in taxes, it's not exclusion or anything like that, this is just borrowing short term, correct?
Yep.
So this is a ban?
This is a
that
ban.
You'll roll into the bond?
1 year ban, but we needed the special so they could begin spending right away.
Okay.
So Steve, it's more than just design, so to be more accurate here, it would be to be expended by the Permanent Municipal Building Committee for the professional services in advance of construction, which would include design.
Would that number reduce the 13.1 million then by 1.5, or is this above and beyond the 13.1?
It's included,
So it's included?
yeah.
So it's,
I can word that probably into amended to say.
So,
if you want.
Essentially, if you're voting for this article, you're voting for the whole process to
The
go,
whole
to
13.
go, the whole 13.
We're, yeah, here we're voting for the 1.5.
So the 13.1 is the projected cost of the whole project.
Right.
The state's giving us 5.8.
Yep.
We're asking for 1.5 now, and the trustees are fundraising with a goal of hitting 1 million. We are in the 600, 650 range, somewhere in that range now, on what we either have raised or have pledged. So
So it's a $7 to $7.5 million project, if the 13.1 is still a good number.
It's 6 to 7, right? 5.8 plus 1. We're expecting 6.8 million, so we're covering like 55% of the cost.
You're expecting 5.8.
Right.
So 5.8 from 13.1 is 7.7.
And we're raising $1 million,
Yeah,
so we're down to 6.2.
6.3?
Yeah, 6.3.
so we're betting that you're raising $1 million.
We have, yes.
Okay.
So we have about 450 to 500 that we have in cash already on hand, and between, I don't remember the exact numbers, but we're on 175 pledged, I think. We're over 600,000, between 600 and 650 that we have either in cash or pledged right now for the library project.
So why are you only pledging 100?
Huh?
So why are you only pledging 100?
So the rest of the money will go, when the thing goes forward, the whole, whatever we have left goes forward.
The 100,000 is between now and Springtown meeting.
So
It's just to cover, you know, all those costs between, in the next couple of months.
Well, it can be used for a lot of stuff with the current library.
Okay.
So included in that 13.1 is $100,000 for land,
Yeah,
which the town owns, so that's, you know, that can be taken off. And included in the 13.1 is some type of lead certification, either just certification or silver, which would bring back $100,000 to $200,000 of
In
that
additional grant
to the
money.
town.
Yeah, but that's a situation where you spend 100 to get 100, right?
Yeah, but
That's
but the
not-
architect already built in the lead certification
In the 13.1?
into the 13.1,
The cost part.
the cost part, yeah.
Okay, Selectman
My question was
Bartos?
around that, so,
Yeah.
Chuck DeCoste.
I'm sorry, yeah.
So, that was my question, was
Oh, okay.
whether or not the 5.8 reimbursement included the bump up, I guess.
the 5.8 does not include the reimbursement from the state. That's done after the building is certified.
Okay. But the 13.1 is inclusive of it being built to lead certification.
Yes.
And we don't know if the 13.1 is good anymore.
So we'll know, that the goal, part of the goal
And
of
that's
this is to get
obviously
that
when
number
you're spending the
for
money to
October.
find out, but that's,
So the only other question I had was, the question I posed at the Board of Selectmen meeting the other night, last week, was the point, what does it cost us to do lead certification? Is it worth building to the certification, or do we end up
Right,
spending
Right, well, that's-
$300,000 to get $100,000?
That's why I brought it up at the meeting on Tuesday, just to understand better what that mechanism was. If we build to just the minimum lead certification, it's 100,000. If we build to the silver, it's
It's about 200,000.
It's about 200,000. But you might end up spending a little bit more to get to that 200,000.
But you will have an operating savings by, which he said he would give us some numbers, so.
Right.
Going forward.
So to Fred's point from the meeting before, he wanted to know what the, operating costs would be, and what the savings would be if we go to lead, so
okay.
they're gonna be working on that.
You're bringing on a new building. It always costs more to run a new building than it does where you were. We're talking about a senior center. What's the annual operating cost of a senior center? I don't know, but somebody should be looking at that as we go forward.
So we've actually talked, when we met with the architect, that was one of the things we talked about, was to get an operational, the cost estimate of an operational cost of the building, for just the building. From the salary perspective, we're not anticipating an operational bump on staffing. At this point, we're just trying to figure out how much it costs, for the building itself.
Right.
So, and the architect, we won't have that number in May, but we'll have that number definitely for October.
And have we settled on what happens if the sewer gets pushed out beyond when you want to open your library? It's just a practical question, where, do you put outhouses out back, or?
It can connect to the current sewer system.
I'm sorry?
It can connect to our current sewer system. We already confirmed that.
You've confirmed that it can?
We spoke to our engineers, yes.
Okay.
There's no impact to capacity, or anything, current capacity or anything like that.
Okay.
Well, there'll be some reduction because they're not using what they're using now, so.
I guess my only other question here, again, it's looking at the $13 million price tag on this. And Steve, rely on your professional opinion here, but building into a slope site seems to always be a little tricky, at least from the few things that I've seen over my life. Do you think that number's a good number, or do you think it's really close, or are we gonna look at 13.1 and then a year down the road, we're like, well, this site's really tricky, we're gonna need another 3?
Well, it's a valid question. We did do some borings out there, only 3 borings. I think we're gonna have to do some more borings. As soon as you start digging into, especially out here, they use the back of the building here as kind of a dump site.
Yeah.
So,
Is that built into the 10% or?
there's a 5% contingency.
5%?
I don't
Yeah.
remember the number, but yeah.
The 5% contingency, so, the short answer is I can't give you an answer.
And you don't know that until construction.
Well,
Design might fig, I
if
mean,
we do some more borings and we find some deleterious material down there, that'll inform us.
okay.
The 3 borings that we took, they were clear.
So right now, regardless of all of that, the risk
Faith. It's a leap
is
of
the
faith.
it's a 1.5 risk.
1.5 million leap
We
of
did
faith.
a 2.5 on the sewer, so that's, if you want this
I mean,
to move
look what
forward,
happened.
I mean, that's.
That's what happened at the police department. We did borings there and
Yeah.
then we ran into all that,
Yeah, now, what did that come, was that an overage on the police department? Did that cause an overage?
no.
We found all sorts of stuff down there.
Yeah, we did. It was a mess.
Farm property.
Well, fire department too.
No, that's what I was thinking
Oil
about.
Right.
tank or something?
Was that?
Oil tank or something like that?
No, they burned down an old building and just left it
Well,
there.
that was the old town hall that had burned
Oh,
down
the old
there.
town hall? Okay.
And they didn't just burn it down,
Yeah, it wasn't intentional.
had a little help.
All right, anything else on this article?
I'll do a motion.
Okay.
Motion to recommend Article 5, Library
amended.
Trustees Board of Selectmen as amended, to read library building project design and professional services in advance of construction for $1.5 million.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
I'm sorry?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, so we have 5 and 1 abstention. How many we got here tonight? 2, 5, 6, 5 and 1. Late. Okay.
501.
Okay, is that, yep. That's Article 6, Senior Center, Community Center Stabilization Fund. Personally, don't think it's necessary, but the money's in stabilization, it takes a 2/3 vote to get it out. I know
Why do we vote?
the kumbaya of put it in there so we can't spend it on something else, but
Create a Center for Active Living.
That's what's out there, active livers.
watch out for those seniors. They're gonna have walker races.
What if I'm not active?
We've got,
Am I-
we've
we
got
gonna-
seniors that
It's up to you. I mean,
Yeah, it's
kayak racing down here on
show support, I guess.
That's up to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote to recommend Article 6, establish senior center, community center stabilization fund.
Second.
Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns?
I will abstain on that because it contains the words community center, which the seniors are not interested in.
Well, some seniors are not interested in.
Yes. That's been,
The seniors that I know are not interested in.
Okay.
All right, then.
Alan
Well,
doesn't
what are we
like
voting?
communities, he said. That's what I heard.
Because we know where the pressure's coming from on this one. This is your article. Do you want the community center part of it, or,
We can still modify and amend the actual verbiage.
If it changes, we'll have to vote again, that's all.
right,
I mean, our stated intent is to fund the senior center. There's an internal debate as to what that includes. We're aware of that.
well,
I'll defer to my colleague on that.
But even at the last
I would
meeting,
propose that we put Elder and Human Services facilities,
whatever.
something to that effect, but it's,
Well, I
can't be
suggested
changed
just
just
some
based on me making
clarification,
that.
then come back on the second.
we're gonna hold on that vote, okay. I'll withdraw the,
The only reason that I left in community center right now, and I wanted to bring it up with the selectmen, is because if the article specifically says senior center for a purchase of a building, so now if we end up using that,
We weren't
For
talking about
something
purchase
else.
building. We just want to put
I
the money aside.
understand that,
so
if we're using that money eventually to purchase a building,
Not necessarily.
if we
or build a building,
build a
or,
building,
Right.
I'm just saying, if we acquire a building somehow, and we had extra space available on the second floor that the senior center did not use, we possibly could not be able to put anything else there. That was the opinion from town council. So that's why, but you wanna take it out and have an empty second?
I also
No.
say, there's gonna be, for all the people that won't vote, aren't gonna be happy if it
Right.
says community center, there's gonna be a whole nother
Yeah.
group of people that aren't gonna be happy if it only says senior center.
Right.
Because they're gonna view it as not the most efficient use of,
right.
It's
So,
potentially efficient
and this
use, so-
argument happened in the
Right.
group during your meeting,
Yeah, we
in the
discussed it.
background, I could hear it all,
But
so.
I think what ought to prevail is what Anthony just stated, that legal counsel's weighed in that if we, this has the broadest latitude, that even if we're 100% for doing a senior center exclusively, and there's a, and that if we only put that language in there, it precludes you from the option of buying a building where you would have additional space that could be used for other. So it's, even aside the argument whether
Yeah.
how you conduct the senior center, it still has some latitude to it. When Chuck offered two, I think we'd arrive at the same place. but that
Elder and
language is
senior,
not good.
elders, and human services.
Human Services is pretty broad in my opinion. We do have a department.
It is, but it sounds like there's a group that doesn't want it to be broad,
Well, there's,
so,
the seniors, I have a real concern that if it's a community center, it's no longer a senior center. And by and large, our experience in talking with other senior centers, which, by the way, we're the only town around here that doesn't have one, everybody else does, is that if it's a community center, the seniors keep getting pushed further and further and further away. Now, if it's a senior center and we have some extra space, come on down.
So,
But
Well,
that's,
with this language, we can do that.
yeah, I think that's how it's gonna have to be sold at town meeting, though, is that conversation right there, because it's,
Well,
I don't-
well, it's a selectmen's article.
it is.
They have to present it, and they have to come out of
let
some
me
shoot on
let me
this.
defend it as being Elder and Human Services or funds allocated specifically for a senior center. That's what it is. That's what the intention.
Yeah.
The intention's not to be, it's not to be able to wrangle something else in. And I think we can wordsmith it smartly enough, using town council, to say, these funds are being used to create a senior center. It's not, it's, in all likelihood, it's gonna cost us more than $3 million to build a senior center, or to acquire a building, or to renovate this building, whatever it is, whatever we end up doing to create our senior center, it's gonna cost us more than $3 million. And if it happens to be buying 8 Pleasant Street, just to make up an address, because instead of always using the same address that we keep using, then if there's extra space in 8 Pleasant Street, but we used $3 million or $5 million to build the senior center, and we realize that there's other space there, if we do certain kind of bonding and stuff, we can't do anything else. We can't use it for other
I
uses.
personally don't see the value of Article 9 at all. You already have the $3 million sitting in capital stabilization. It takes a 2/3 vote to get money out. It takes a 2/3 vote to get money out of this. All it says is, we love the seniors and we're gonna put money where our mouth is.
I respect-
And you can,
I respect your
you
opinion.
can earmark the money that's in stabilization now for the same thing and not have to go through all the hoo-ha of Article 9.
I respect your
I
opinion,
just
but
don't see the
I feel
value
it's
of it.
important to designate that $3 million from the capital stabilization specifically for a senior center.
And that's the policy decision that the board agreed on, and that's, I mean, we're eyes open, we're not taking money out, it's money that's already in there, we're designating it, you know, with a promise to the seniors, and it really doesn't have any financial impact, unless you perceive one that I can't see, but it is it's putting our
It's a promissory note,
promissory note.
With $3 million sitting there.
that's right.
that you can't
Because
do anything else with.
Well, that's why you probably wanna leave in
Right.
the word
Can't do anything else with
community
it.
center.
Exactly.
the next Board of Selectmen could very well decide not to use that money for a senior
Well-
center, but to use it to buy an ambulance.
Well,
If you-
no, I
if-
mean,
if it's
it's the
not
next town, it's the
designated.
next town meeting, or whatever, that would actually be able to do it,
Town
selectmen
meeting.
can't do anything with it.
No, I'm saying, but you could recommend it, the next one of the one after that, so that's
think-
why
I think
the
a vote-
seniors are looking for a commitment.
From
And
town.
this provides the commitment.
Right.
The $1 million commitment.
Yeah, Alan, back to the wording of it, I think that having the way it's written, if that's gonna save you, if that's gonna get you 30 votes that you wouldn't have gotten because you kept it the other way, it's something to go back and talk about. I mean, that's, having that option, because we don't know what it's gonna look like. We don't know if we're purchasing a piece of land to build
No,
on.
I do understand it perfectly.
Right, so I know I've heard the complaints from other seniors as well that you bring up, but I think that there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't know.
Yeah, well, you don't have to convince me about that, because you've got the votes to go ahead and put it in.
Yeah.
And I,
Okay.
and I
I'm just
understand that there's
saying
possibility.
in general, when it's pitched, I don't know how hard I would fight that. I mean, that's where it's,
Yeah.
And it's certainly something that could change on town meeting floor. Town council will be there and he will advise
yeah,
town meeting,
what you can
the
and
reason
can't
this
do.
language is in there is
Okay.
for this, this, and this. So I think you put it to the voters, and if it happens to be amended on town meeting floor because of how it was proposed, so be it.
Regardless, I withdrew recommending it yet. I just want to see, because there's a lot of conversation still that could happen between now and the time we meet again. So this could change, just the word. And if it does, it does. If it doesn't, we'll vote on it on the second.
Yeah, you guys can take a vote that night.
So we're holding that to the second.
And I won't be here to cast aspersions. It ought to fly through.
One less
Okay.
senior.
Gramps?
Yeah, I'm gonna be out spending money. Okay, and there's a voter petition that we don't normally vote on. Okay,
Okay.
that's the 2 warrants. Thank you very much for your time and effort.
We have a vote on minutes.
Yes, we have one set of minutes that, let's see here, remind me of the date, Mark.
February 5th.
February, we have minutes of February 5th that were circulated a while ago.
And then I recirculated them.
Most recently for that is March discussion. Entertain a motion,
Motion to approve minutes as written.
February 5th, okay. Second?
For the 5th of February. Yeah.
You got it, I thought I heard that. Second?
Second.
Only
Motion.
9:30 and you're wrapping up. Come on.
Motion
Someone's
is,
hanging around.
Aye.
you know.
We get paid by the hour.
motion is second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
Abstain.
Two abstentions.
Two
Steve-
abstentions?
Steve and
Oh,
I.
that's right, because you weren't here. Okay, but we have a quorum, so we're all set. Those are,
Yeah, that was a small,
yep. Okay.
Two of them were, weren't there? Were there two sets of minutes?
Yeah, but,
The other one's not,
Ones
a lot of
that I
edits.
sent out last night.
needed
I
editing.
sent 2 sets out last night.
Yeah?
I made
Oh, so you
substantial-
wanna wait and get those incorporated in? Okay, got it.
I wasn't there for that one.
Just look, pick up your phone and have 30.
okay. Anybody want, no, they're all happy, not.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I move adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. All
Aye.
those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Out of here, flip
Arr.
the switch.